so I can start recording. So for the national side today, the focus is basically what I do is I go through the different sections. So have both of you tested?
A while ago.
Okay, all right. And Brianna, have you tested?
No.
Okay.
I have like 3 more tests in the module to do.
Okay.
Before I test.
So you have never gone out and tested. So what I do is I take the PSI candidate bulletin, and basically in there are sections that they say there's X number of questions on this topic, X number on that. So what I try to do is I try to take the sections. I've got all kinds of lists and different ways to teach this. I try to take the sections that have the most questions, and then I go over them and try to go through, okay, what do we need to review out of the section? Because I feel like, to spend a lot of time on a section that only has 3% of the questions is not that valuable to you. So, the goal is for you to say, I really am struggling with this. I really want information about that. Because otherwise I'm going to lead it and see where your knowledge is. And what I'm typically trying to drill down to, that's why these are individual from the standpoint of there's not that many people on a session, is what are you not understanding? Because if I can kind of hear in your brain, like, gosh, this is not clicking, then I can teach to that versus just going over a bunch of stuff that you already know.
And Kathy, real quick, do you have an idea of when you receive the results of that exam? What is the email that they send from? Do you know? Because I have the results. It was so long ago, I forgot though.
The psiexams.com would be, what I would, look for.
Oh, I think
and most people on both tests, whether it be Colorado or national, the contracts are the biggest portion of the test. On the Colorado, it's almost a third of the test. On the national, it is 17%. So it's, almost a fifth of the test. So I think that, spending the time in that section is important. But because this is personal, I want to see, is there anything that you feel you need? Is there anything particular that you're looking for that I can answer for you?
So let's see. Property ownership, I got 6 out of 6. Land use, 3 out of 4.
So your weaknesses should be the contracts. It's usually agency contracts, kind of like real estate in practice.
Yeah. So it looks like for the national, how they broke it down, the content area, general principles of agency. That looks like it was a weak spot.
Okay.
Also is that contracts.
Okay.
Other than that, and real estate calculations, but I'll do better now. I feel like
okay. And we're doing math on Friday. I don't know if you signed up for. Okay, that's fine. But math, people don't fail the test because of math. So, and Brianna, you were in Ann and Betsy's class, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you've listened to me on audio would be my guess. That's how you might know my voice, is from listening through that.
I don't.
Really? Okay, so when you go into the pacing schedule, it should have been reading a chapter, so let's say reading a chapter from the Modern Real Estate. Then you would be listening to the audio. So on our site, where there's the black bar and there's the online exams, there are audio classes. So it's me talking about chapter 1, chapter 2.
Okay.
So
I'll have to review that.
Yeah, that will really help you for sure, because that's me going in depth over, as the owner, going over each of the chapters. And you wouldn't have known that it was me, and especially today when I'm like making every mistake I can think of. But that will be really helpful to you as you study, is listening to those audios. So as we go through here, if you're okay, I'm going to start with contracts, and we're going to talk about different topics, kind of like overviews, and see what you know. A lot of what I will be saying is just the snippets that will give you, okay, there's going to be questions on these topics. So when we're looking at a contract, it's always an agreement to do something. We're either going to buy or sell. We're actually, if I say that I've signed a contract with Savannah, you would assume that she has hired me either to put a sign in the yard or to take her out and show her properties. Now, if she is writing an offer, I am not a party to the contract. So a contract to buy and sell, an offer is between buyer and seller. I do sign the offer, but I do not sign it as a party to it. I sign it to acknowledge that I have the earnest money, yes or no, and who's paying me. But I am not a party to the contract to buy and sell, which is one of the reasons that if they ask a question about if a contract terminates, then your question is, okay, if that contract terminates, who is going to be at fault? Like, or who is going, what's going to happen? Well, if it is a contract between a buyer and a seller, okay, versus a contract between me and Savannah. So if she has hired me and we are agreeing to terminate, that's just terminating our relationship. She may hire another agent and list her home. So when we're looking at contracts, they're typically either express or implied. Express is in writing, and the way I remember that is I put an X for the word express, and so that is in writing. Implied is through my actions. So that is something that I am doing that is going to create you to believe that I am working with you. So if I meet you at a Starbucks and I'm there working and you say, I overhear that you're looking at a house down the street, I may say, oh my gosh, I can show that to you. You get in the car, we drive down there, we look at the house. I think you're going to use me. I think I'm going to be your agent. So I go home, tell my husband, oh my gosh, I met a new client. Well, then when you go home, you tell your husband and they go, yeah, my buddy's a realtor. Let's give him a call and we'll write up the offer. So that is an implied contract. I did not get it in writing. And that's the type of contract that will absolutely, unfortunately not be enforced in court. So I have to be sure that, if I'm doing something and my actions are implying that I'm going to be your agent, then I better get it expressed in writing. One of the other big topics under contracts is unilateral versus bilateral. So basically, a unilateral contract binds one party. So if my example is I am a seller, and I am selling the blue house and the white house. I hold up my credit cards. Okay, so I'm selling the blue house. I have agreed to sell Savannah the blue house. Okay, I have also said that she has the buyer, or that she's the seller. So she's selling both. Brianne, is it Brianna or Brianne?
I go by Bree.
Bree, okay. So Bree is the buyer. So Bree says, I'm going to buy the blue house. Savannah says, if you want to buy the white house within a year for $100,000, then you have the option to buy that. So Savannah has given a bilateral contract. She's given two promises, blue and white. Bree has only said, I'm buying the blue with the option to buy the white. So therefore, it's binding to only, Bree is only bound to buy one. Okay, thank you. Yeah. But Savannah has agreed to buy two. Okay, so looking at this, you're always looking at, if we say option, if there's an option, then I think the issue is then one person has said that they gave two promises, the other has only given one. So you've got the option or the giver, and the option E is the buyer. So the option or has said, I'm going to give you two promises to sell blue and white house. Option E, buyer, one promise, it's only binding them unilaterally. Okay, and as I go, I can talk for 4 or 5 hours. So please tell me, hey, we got this. All right. then a valid enforceable contract, okay? So we know that in order to have a contract, you've got to have, there are elements of a contract that will make it valid. So people use different acronyms. One of the acronyms I've heard lately is COLIC. Okay, like I'm not sure what, what I can make that relate to, but the C says they have to be competent parties, capable, competent parties, okay? The O, there has to be offer and acceptance for a valid enforceable contract. So there's got to be some sort of a meeting of the minds. Then there has to be a legal purpose. So, it's a lawful, we're writing an offer, we're writing the contract. Then it has to be in writing according to the statute of frauds, because if it's not in writing, I can't enforce that. And then the last thing, sorry, I have a very talkative puppy. There has to be consideration. And consideration, people usually get confused and they think consideration is earnest money. And it's very confusing on the test, and you have to be sure you know that earnest money is not the same as consideration. Earnest money is where a buyer is saying, hey, I want to buy the house. I seriously, earnestly want your home. So I'm going to give you some money up front. And so, that's what, I'm going to earnestly give you $5,000, $10,000. It will go towards my down payment, but it's definitely not required. So if a seller, let me shut my little door here. If a seller doesn't want to take earnest money, they do not have to. And the consideration could be the handshake, the love and affection, the hug. So it's anything that the seller is willing to take of value. But again, earnest money is not required for a valid contract. All right, when we're talking about the statute of frauds, basically, again, that's something where it would have to be in writing in order to be enforced. And if you think about it, in order for something to be enforced, some of the things that are unenforceable would be a 9-month lease. A 9-month lease would be something where it's under a year. We know that leases over a year would be expressed in writing, but a 9-month lease would not. So the key is anything that we are going to come after and make sure and enforce is going to be some sort of property. There's going to be property attached to it. So let's say you did a bill of sale, and you remember a bill of sale is for chattel, personal property. Those are words that go together. And that bill of sale is something that, does it have to be something that if I'm buying your couch out of the deal, okay, does that have to be in a contract form? No, I can just buy your couch and you can give me a bill of sale. So it's different because it's not having to do with the real property, the actual house. When we're looking at a contract, there are different ways a contract can be classified. So it is either valid, void, or voidable, or unenforceable, okay? So when we're looking at that, if it is valid, it's got COLIC, it's got competent parties, offer and acceptance, a legal purpose, it's in writing, and there's consideration, okay? So with that, valid means it's done, we're good, okay? If it is void, then automatically void means it's missing one of the, actually, let's see, hold on. Having trouble, I'm actually working during your CRAM. Oh, okay. All right. So this person's working. That's good. They weren't even going to get on the CRAM. All right. So if it is void, it means it's missing one of those elements. So, if it doesn't matter which one it is, you just have to remember, COLIC, competent parties, offered acceptance, legal purpose, in writing, and consideration. Missing any of those, okay, void, totally. So it did not meet the requirements. Voidable means there's a choice. So the contract, once we find out, the contract can continue or it cannot continue. So voidable would be a minor. So we've got someone underage. It would also be somebody under duress, somebody with a mental handicap. Okay, there's a choice there. It's like if I had a grown son, 30 years old, and they were, mentally handicapped at some point, and I learned that an agent came in and put them, gave them some pressure and got them to list their house. Okay, I could claim that it is voidable. The minor could then claim voidable, because that's a choice. We could continue, but they have an out. Now, one of the things that people have been seeing on the test recently is that if a minor is married, in the military, or emancipated, the law will see them as fully functioning. Okay, so then it would be a valid contract. So again, if they're in the military, emancipated, or married, even though they're under 18, they would be considered legal.
Valid.
Yep, valid. Okay. Unenforceable is typically because it's not in writing. Oh, and there's been a question lately about, you got really drunk last night. You know how people go to Vegas, get drunk, get married. Okay, well, I guess you could be very drunk and buy a house. Okay, so, you would be not maybe in your right mind. So they're saying, okay, well, what would happen in that situation? They would be saying they were under duress. Okay.
Incompetent, like, yeah, okay.
Yes. So it's just a little different ways of thinking. And one of the ways I do these CRAM sessions is I go back to, like my last, 10 students, and I say, okay, what are you seeing on the test? Because I only teach once a week in Arvada. And so, anybody in my class, of course, I'm getting close to, and I'm saying, hey, when you pass, did you see a question about this? Or what did you see that you hadn't felt we covered as well in class? So those are the things that I'm trying to always put in a CRAM session. We just started doing these in December. I mean, this was just something where we're finding that people either from long ago, or people, maybe they've gone to another school, they can't seem to pass, they don't want to retake the class, they just want the key points that they need. Okay. All right. So when we're getting an offer, okay, you know that all offers must be presented. Makes no difference if we're driving on our way to closing, you have to present the offer. So then the seller has a choice. What do I have to do with these offers? Okay, well, as an agent, I have to present them, and then the seller, they can either accept it, they can reject it. They actually don't have to do anything if they chose. I mean, they could just act like they didn't get it, but I, as an agent, want to make sure I show that they received it, okay? And then they can counter. So the one thing that I want you to understand about a counter is that it is a two-step process. So the first step is we reject the original offer. And the second step is we create a counter, which if you guys have bought or sold homes, an actual contract is about 18 pages. Counter is only 3. But for the test, we reject the old offer, okay, the whole old offer, and the counter has everything in it. It's like a new offer, okay, with any changes that we wanted. Now, if I get an offer, so let's say that I go out and I show property on Memorial Day, and my client sees a house and they're super excited, and they go out to dinner and they call and say, we want to write. So I stay up late, I work hard, I get the offer in, and then, next day they go to work and they start freaking out, whether they hear that they paid too much for the property, or they could find a better home. Outside forces are always a problem in real estate. Okay. It's like, oh, really? You talk to your family member? What a drag. Okay. So at that point, we could withdraw that offer, because at that point, no one has accepted it. If a seller has signed it and delivered it and actually given it back to us, then we're under contract. But until that point, it's just sitting out there. So let's say on a weekend, I go look at homes. Listings come out on Thursdays, typically Wednesdays and Thursdays. I go look at the home on Friday, but they're not accepting offers until Monday. but we go ahead, put in our offer with an acceptance date of Monday at 6 p.m. On Saturday, I see another home that we love way more. I can withdraw that offer because it has not, the seller has not accepted it and communicated it back to us, okay? Oh yes, this is Latte. You will hear him, you will see him. Oh yeah, he's just adorable, but he a pain in the butt. He a pain in the butt.
Cute.
Yeah, he's cute, but you know, that's about it, okay? He's cute, but now I'm looking for the spray to spray him so he gets down and leaves me alone. He's very affectionate, okay? All right, so again, I can withdraw it as long as it hasn't been accepted. That's really the key. So the next topic that we talk about is executed versus executory. So when you have a contract, okay, when I write an offer, in order for it to become a contract, it's going to either have to be signed, initialed, and it's going to be accepted and communicated. So when I write that offer, it's not a contract until everybody's signed, it's been communicated and accepted. So when we're looking at that, once it becomes a contract, then we enter into an executory period. So agents think the contract is executed when we've all signed it. But for the test, executory is before closing. So at that point, you know, I'm working on the contract. We enlist the help of the title company, we enlist the help of lenders, everybody starts doing their jobs. We get the appraisal done, we get the HOA docs. So in that executory period, I'm basically managing it as an agent, and we have not completed it. So it is not fully executed until closing. So the words, and the thing about the test, the really hard thing about the test is the wording. They're trying to trick you on that wording. So sometimes having these vocabulary like, okay, I know executory is before, we haven't closed, there's still something to be performed. And even if you're all the way past appraisal, what still needs to be performed is closing, okay? So getting these vocabulary words in your mind will help you a lot. All right, now contract as far as default, okay? So if somebody is in default, seller or buyer, there are things that can happen to them. So throughout our contract, I'll talk about it in a little while, we talk about time is of the essence. And that means that, hey, there are dates in the contract and you better be paying attention because people's earnest money is at risk. Last night, I had an agent, he was not able to get loan approval by yesterday. That was his deadline. We sent over an amend extend. That is the document that says, hey, we're going to amend the contract and change the loan date. And there were 3 people that needed to sign it. By 9 p.m., only 2 had signed it. And I text the agent and said, hey, you got to get the 3rd signature. Your earnest money is on the line as of 11, midnight. So he was like, oh yeah, they're going to sign it. They're going to sign it. Well, I woke up this morning. They did sign it after midnight. So technically, I know the seller wants to work with the buyer, and I know that they're going to probably get to the table. But technically, we're out of contract because that amend was not signed, and my client, which happens to be the agent themselves, is at risk. And he goes, oh, I think we're fine, we're fine, we're fine. Okay, we're fine until somebody brings it up, and legally, we have a problem at that point. Okay, so if someone is in breach, they basically did not do what they should have. So I've got somebody today, one of my agents, and their buyer is going to terminate the deal. And they have not turned in their earnest money yet. So we could not turn in our earnest money, but then we'd be in breach and maybe they would be able to do something to us. So we are going to back out due to the loan, saying that we don't like the loan terms, which is the truth. She didn't like the interest rate. So based on that, we're going to back out and get our earnest money back. Because when we're in breach, then there are damages that could be taken. The first damage is liquidated damages. So that is where they will take whatever has been given per the contract. So liquidated damages, the example is earnest money. So in this case, if my client didn't perform this week, that agent I was talking about, he would potentially lose his earnest money due to the paragraph called liquidated damages. All right, punitive damages, okay, are something where if we go to court, then the court is going to award damages to whoever defaulted, okay? So that would be something that would happen outside of the contract. So for example, if you don't move out, so in our contracts, it says that you have to pay like $100 per day or $500 per day if you don't get out on the day you're supposed to. So the reality is, if you don't get out, you guys have to go and sue each other, buyer and seller. The agent is not involved at that point, but we would be going to the court, small claims court, for punitive damages. Okay, sorry, I can't say the word very well. Compensatory damages, again, are court ordered, and they're going to compensate someone due to the fact that the closing didn't occur. So let's say that I'm a buyer and I've got the moving truck. I've already given notice at my apartment. I mean, I may need, because I'm going to have economic loss. So they're going to compensate me due to that. I'm going to go grab the spray so I can spray my puppy. Hold on, because he's going to bug me. Go. It's amazing little spray. We got it off Shark Tank, but it helps. We just spray them. It's just canned air, but it works. Oh, right. We'll take anything at this point. If we are going to, so in a contract, there's liquidated damages and there's something called specific performance. And that means that someone has failed to do what they were supposed to do, let's say not come to closing, then the other person may have the right, depending on what's marked in the contract, to sue them to perform because they promised to close. And, my example is always a seller who backs out the day before closing because the wife is super sad because she's selling like her family home. Okay. In that case, the buyer could sue them to perform. So it's called specific performance. I can sue you to perform. Getting out of a contract, okay? So when we're talking about a contract between a buyer and a seller, okay, then termination would occur, depends on which state you live in, but destruction of the property, like a fire burns down. So in some states, the buyer basically owns a portion of it. They have an interest in the home prior to closing. In Colorado, that is not true. So if the home burns down, seller still owns it, okay? So, I've been at a closing before where there is a tremendous hailstorm and you're like, oh God, that's a bummer because till that closing is over, seller owns the property, they're gonna have to make a claim on their homeowner's insurance. So, closing with hail is a problem in Colorado for sure. The death of a principal. So do you guys remember who a principal is in a transaction? It's the buyer or the seller, okay? So death of a principal, yes, buyer or seller die, contract, okay, we have a problem. Okay, but depending on what their will is, it may not terminate because if they have heirs, those heirs will be expected to follow through with the sale. So it is not just because you die during the transaction, it is not an automatic out of a contract. So that's important for you to remember for the test. Now, they are going to try to trick you. They're going to say you have a contract and it's an agency contract. Agency means between a seller, between a buyer. One of us dies, okay, then how can that go on? Now, in some states, the employing broker, that is with the employing broker. So if I die as a salesperson, employing broker owns the listing. It continues, okay? So the death of the broker, it depends. You've got to look at, is it an agency contract? Because in a contract to buy and sell, if I'm closing on a house next week and I die today, doesn't make a difference. Closing is happening. I am not a party to that contract, okay? And your employing broker will own your listing. So if I have 5 listings and I'm getting ready to move from Coldwell Banker to Keller Williams, okay, my broker, that broker Coldwell owns those listings. He may let me take them to Keller, he may not. So typically, most brokerages will let you take them if they are not under contract. Once they're under contract, you're gonna close them out at Coldwell Banker. Okay, so because they want a portion of their money at that point, that's what they're looking for. A contract can also terminate if both parties agree. Buyer and seller just agree that they, hey, I really decided I don't want to move. That's okay. We don't like the house that much. Okay, so mutual agreement, and the word is recession. Okay, so the word, and we talk about it when we talk about a counter. So if I give you a counter and then I decide, oh, I don't want the house anymore, I can pull it back, and it's called rescinding. I'm rescinding the counter. And when we rescind the counter, in your mind, it means we put the parties back to their original position. A seller, a buyer, not the seller and the buyer in a deal. So I'm still a buyer. I rescind my counter. I'm still a buyer out looking for homes with my agent, but I am not the seller's buyer anymore. And so when we rescind, we pull it back. So mutual agreement, we pull it back, and I still become a buyer, but I'm not the buyer in that contract any longer. Okay. Bankruptcy or foreclosure. If I have my house listed, I have a sign out front, and all of a sudden I'm in a position where I need to pull it off the market. So that is an operation of the law. I pull it off the market, and I'm basically saying, until I get through bankruptcy, I can't have my house listed. After bankruptcy, I will go ahead and relist it. Okay. All right, moving on. So I talked already a little bit about time is of the essence. And, it's basically saying, hey, you have a role, there's a date in here. We've got to make sure that you are getting, whatever it is. If you need the earnest money, if you're supposed to do your inspection by that time. So the other day, someone was supposed to do a structural inspection, bring out a structural engineer in Leadville on a property. Okay. The date was Monday. They did not do it. And because the contract said we'll extend if it's a holiday, it went to Tuesday. On Tuesday, my agent called and said, hey, should I call and see if they're going to do it? No. Okay. That is their deadline. They miss it. They miss it. Okay. So again, time is of the essence. It depends on who's to perform. We know that when we buy property, there could be a lot of contingencies. We could have a mortgage contingency that we get our financing. We might need to get an appraisal at a certain price in order to, make this work. We might have a house to sell. There are various contingencies. The one that is not happening right now, but that will come back into our future, will be a short sale, which is a lien holder. The bank has to give approval of the short sale in order to say, okay, yes, that's fine. You can go ahead and sell the home. So since you're the only one I'm looking at, Savannah, do you understand a short sale?
Isn't that as to where like the property is under foreclosure and you do a short sale?
So yes, the bank is taking, if you owe 400 and you're going to sell at 380, the bank is taking a short. They're taking a shortage. So they're taking 20,000 less, and then they can create what's called a deficiency agreement upon that. Okay.
Okay.
Do you know the difference between addendum versus amendment? Okay. So amendment is a change, okay, to a contract. An addendum or addenda is adding, ADD, adding something to a contract.
Amendment, changing, addendum is adding and changing, revising basically.
Or just think of adding, not changing. Okay. Addendum is adding to what's already written, and it can only be done by the principals, buyer, seller, or an attorney. I don't write addendums. I write amendments, and always think the reason I can't write an addendum is because there's no pre-printed form. In any state, you can fill in the blanks of a contract, right, but I can't just like make up my own form. So but if a buyer decided to, they could do that. Okay. But
a buyer, seller, and an attorney, right? Could do an addendum. Okay, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
And amend, think, okay, amend, we've already agreed. to a contract. Now we're making a change. We're not going to leave the fridge. We're going to move the closing, that type of thing.
Okay. Perfect. Great.
And, with our market being such, we may have multiple offers. There may be, 20 offers. I know that sounds like out of control, but that's happening all day long. And so, we make a spreadsheet of those offers for our client, but each one has to be sent to them. And then our job is to educate them. Okay, this offer is really good, but they're asking for money back, or they're not closing until August, or they, this offer, they're putting 400,000 down. This one, they're only putting 200. So our job is to help them. But in any situation, if they are showing that they are going to violate fair housing because they don't like the name of that person, or, they have some issue, maybe they saw them there, and whether they're driving a really nice car and they're prejudiced about they just act like they've got all that money, or they're driving a really crappy car and they think they're poor. Okay, again, if your client is starting to go into that spiral, rule of thumb is everyone is equal, and if they are asking you to do something illegal, you walk away from the deal. Okay. And that's real life too. And I mean, you may think, oh, nobody would ask me to do something illegal.
No, yeah, it is.
It is. It happens. It definitely happens. So going through the contracts, I'm just looking at, anything else to make sure that I don't have anything else that we want to talk about. I think when you think about, if you get asked a question about when does a contract become binding? Okay, well, it's upon notification. So I sign it, but if I sign it and I don't give it to anybody, nobody knows I've signed it. So it's got to be upon delivery and acceptance, notification of it.
Okay. And that's when it can't be pulled.
Correct, because now people, yes.
Hey, I'm looking at this assignment, substitution of property, novation, substitution of new contract.
Oh, that's different. So assignment and novation, novation is always a new contract. If I assign a contract, I'm only substituting the people. So if you and I are investors and we're buying property and I'm on vacation and you find a good property on the west side of town, you may be the buyer in the contract, but you're going to make it assignable to me so that when I get back into town, I'm the one who actually ends up buying it and taking it over. Novation would be we're creating a whole new contract. And the other place that novation comes into play is when we're talking about assuming a mortgage. So in an assumption of a mortgage, if I am a buyer and I'm assuming your mortgage, the buyer or the seller stays responsible for that mortgage if I default, okay? So the only way they get away from that is they do a novation, a new agreement with the lender. So novation is new, whether it be for a contract or with a loan, an assumption. So that means that buyer will now be responsible if they default.
Perfect. Okay.
So that's where you see those words.
Okay.
Just looking and making sure that I've covered everything, because that's a big chapter. And I just want to be sure that, you know that. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So now I'm going to look through, the other items. And one of the next biggest sections for the national side is general principles of agency and practice of real estate. There's two of those. They both have about 13%. So I just want to be sure that, we're getting those as well.
Yeah.
All right. So agency, okay. That is the special fiduciary relationship. We know that when the consumer is somebody who's going to use us, they're going to come in and they're either going to become a customer. Okay. So that means that I'm showing them honest and fair dealings, but they're not represented. Okay. So, I am basically just giving them the facts. I am not coaching them. When I work with somebody in an agency, I am coaching them. I'm in their ear telling them what to do. Okay. So, but I still, if I learn of something, if I learn the ceiling is leaking, I still have to tell them. Okay. And that's one of the reasons as an agent, if I have a listing and you are backing out of the deal and it's because of inspection, I really don't want to know like all the problems with the house, because once I know them legally, I have to disclose them to every buyer after that. All right, we've got a principal. Okay, so that's that person, they're represented, they're the client. All right. And the fiduciary we discussed. As an agent, I'm acting on your behalf. I'm in a special relationship with you, acting on your behalf. Remember, I'm special agent 007. Okay. So as an agent, a real estate agent, a real estate broker, I am 007, special agent. General agent, we take the word general, ALL, and we go ahead and say, I'm going to take care of all of your property management. So a general agent is typically a property manager. Okay. And they may or may not have an agreement, but they should, because that's how they're going to, actually make sure they get paid.
Okay, so general agent is going to be a property manager, and then an agent is going to be
a special agent 007.
Okay. Good.
Okay. All
Now
right.
it's coming back.
Yeah, no, and it's, that's why it's like going over the key things. So in a single agency, okay, I'm representing one party, okay, and if I'm a single agent firm, well, then I can't have, do you remember designated agency? So like if somebody walks into my open house and they want an agent, but my seller won't let me switch to a transaction broker and they want representation, in a single, if I am Kathy McKay Real Estate, I can't give you an agent. I can't do designated agency because I don't have another agent in my office. In real life, I call my friend, I give them a referral, I get money, I get paid. But for the test, there's only one person in that firm, so there can't be designated agency. Okay, dual agency, we know, is legal in some states, not in Colorado. And that means I can work with the seller, confidential, coach, work with the buyer, coach. Okay, Colorado believes that we cannot do that because we cannot, represent both sides equally. It's always going to be designated, as far as, disclosed, sorry. Dual agency, of course it's going to be disclosed because you wouldn't want to find out that, oh my gosh, I had no idea that you were working with the buyer on the other side. So of course, that is something that we have to make sure that is always disclosed. I'm going to read something here about sub-agency because I do think it's confusing and it's only on the national side. Okay. So where sub-agency is permitted, the licensee represents and owes fiduciary duties to the seller, but the buyers are typically represented by a licensee, thus eliminating by sub-agency in most transactions. So a lot of times they'll talk about on the national, you're employing broker, and then you may be a sub-agent in there. So there's some sections in the yellow modern real estate book that will discuss it. There may be one question about that. If I'm a non-agent, I'm a transaction broker, I am a facilitator, I am that intermediary. So think of it as if I become a transaction broker, I go from one side or the other, and I'm in the middle now. I'm working on the transaction. I am no longer telling either party what to do. I go, hey, you want to offer this? Oh, you want to accept this? I am not saying, I think I can get them lower. I think I can get them higher.
Right.
So my whole role changes.
And that's a transaction broker, you called it?
A transaction. So on the national test, they'll call it a facilitator, an intermediary, a transaction broker. In Colorado, we call it, on the national test, they'll use transaction coordinator, but in Colorado, a transaction coordinator is like a paper pusher, controller of paper. Okay. So it's a little bit different for that. So when I go into an agency agreement, I am, I owe you cold AC. you know, it depends on where you went to school, whether it's cold AC or old car, but I owe you care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure, accounting, and confidentiality. And I think it's worth just reviewing, like, okay, what do I need to do? So for care, you know, my job is to take care of you. And I'm supposed to, if I don't know anything about a well and there's a well on your property, I better get some help and make sure that I'm using reasonable skill and care as I'm advising you. So, and we always, you know, agents get in trouble for not what I would call, they're not, they're going outside their expertise and they're just winging it. Okay, that is dangerous. Okay, so, and if I'm ever worried, then part of my reasonable skill and care would be to say, get legal advice. Okay, for sure. So care, obedience, we know we obey anything that is legal. You don't want to show your house on Saturday? Okay, all right. I mean, it's kind of a busy day for showings, but okay. You have a day sleeper because they work night shift and we can only show after 5 p.m. Okay, I'm obeying. You want us to take off our shoes and turn off the lights? Great, okay. I don't say, well, that's ridiculous. No, I obey. But if they say, we're not gonna let any purple people in the property, and if we look out and see that they're purple, we want you to cancel the showing. Yeah, that's a no-go, okay? So it's gotta be legal, okay? I think that's the biggest thing. So care, obedience, loyalty, that means I work on behalf of your interest, 100%, okay? Disclosure means that whatever I find out, however I find it out. So on the test, do not try to determine, well, I don't know how you found that out. Okay, it doesn't matter. You've got to find it out. So
give me a second. Let me close my windows real quick.
Absolutely, yeah, no problem.
I live on Broadway, so it gets really loud outside.
Yeah, no problem. Hold on. I thought maybe it was raining.
Yeah, there's a building behind me because I live right by the art museums.
Oh, okay.
In the Capitol, but there's a building they're doing work, so they've been like drilling and everything, so it's kind of loud.
Well, after how I started today, it doesn't make any difference.
Okay? Right.
All right. So care, obedience, loyalty, disclosure. Accounting means if you give me keys, if you give me paperwork, if you give me checks, whatever you do, I've got to take care of it. But they're also looking for the words to not commingle, to not put any money that I get in my own account and to not conversion, spend it to pay my bills. Okay, right. Completely illegal. Now you as a new agent, it's not going to be a problem for you. You're going to use a title company or your brokerage. But if you were an independent broker, that's where you could get into trouble. And then cold AC, the last C is confidentiality. And the one thing to be aware of, your confidentiality does not expire. So if your client has told you something private, it stays private long past your deal is done. Okay. And so it's very important in an office structure. I had an agent today that I'm coaching say, hey, can we talk about my buyer and are you bound by confidentiality as well? And I said, yes, I am. So even though I'm coaching that agent and she tells me all this stuff about her buyer, if I happen to be coaching someone who had a seller and she was going to make an offer, I owe the same thing to the seller and to that agent or to that client. So, you know, I'm not going to say they put in an offer and let's say they're really not qualified and they really are like faking this and it's just, you know, whatever, or they pull out of every deal, whatever, you know, whatever I know about them, I am not disclosing that no matter what.
Right.
So confidentiality remains forever. The accounting of everything pretty much ends when the file is done because all the money has been dispersed. Okay.
Right, okay.
All right. So when I'm in a transaction, of course, you know, I'm busy doing various duties. Anytime any client asks, hey, what about capital gains? Do you think this would be a good 1031 exchange? Do you think I'm going to be able to you know, use this money and, you know, buy my next property, pyramid the properties? My answer is talk to an attorney, talk to a CPA. Hey, do you know if sexual pedophiles live in the area? call the local police department. I don't say, oh yeah, I live right down the street. It's totally fine. Never.
Well, and there is actually, isn't there like a website also you could refer them to?
Correct. So typically I'll refer them to the local police department, and then they can go out on specific websites, because most people want information about the area as well, crime statistics, etc. I think in our world right now, I always tell people, look where you live and look where you're going to move, because you can be so surprised what's going on around you. Okay. Yeah, there's like so much going on. Okay. Power of attorney. So even though I can become a power of attorney for a client, it is not recommended, because I already have so much responsibility for them. So if a client is going to be out of town for closing, I will recommend they get another family member, somebody from work, to act as a POA for the transaction. We don't want them to be a POA for their whole, all of the, like a unit, it's called a universal agent. We don't want them to be able to sign and do everything, go get money out of their account. We want it very specific to the transaction that we're working on. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So how do we create agency? What is the contract? Do you know what it would be called? What type of a contract would create an agency agreement?
I do not.
Employment contract.
Agency?
No, employment contract, listing contract. Okay. So it's a listing contract that would actually employ buyer, or seller and the agent. Okay. So when we're creating that listing contract, that is creating our fiduciary agency relationship. So if it is express, it's in writing. We talked about implied, you know, and again, I'm not going to do anything when I'm out working with somebody. Typically, I'm going to get that signed pretty quickly, because I want to make sure that I can get paid. Okay. When we are in an agency agreement, I'm promoting your interests. I'm making sure, you know, whatever that I can do to help you win, I'm on your team. So I always tell my agents, pretend you have a bracelet on that says, what would your buyer, you know, like what would Jesus do bracelets?
Yeah.
What would your buyer want you to say? What would your seller want you to say? And I have an agent right now that I coach, that she like gives away the farm all the time, the farm. Like she just is so easy to give away stuff. This is on her own personal deal, but you know, I'm trying to teach her, you know, if I was your seller, I would want you to stand up for me and not be so generous giving my stuff away. So I'm trying to teach her that on her own listing. So we know that there are different types of listing. The listing that says I get paid no matter who brings the buyer, the owner or myself or another agent, is exclusive right to sell. So it's exclusive right to sell. I get paid no matter what. Exclusive agency says I get paid if I bring the buyer, but if the owner brings the buyer, then I would not get paid. Okay. So the owner reserves the right to actually sell the home themselves.
Which one was that?
Exclusive agency.
Okay.
So exclusive right to sell, I get paid no matter what. Exclusive agency, the owner can still bring the buyer. Open listing says I'm gonna offer it to 10 agents. Whoever brings the buyer, including the owner, will get paid. So it's open to a bunch of them. And then open listing, net listing says, hey, I want to net 110,000. Whatever I can get above that, I will give to you as commission. That is a net listing. In Colorado, even though we're not doing Colorado today, none of them are illegal. They're just not encouraged. We typically use an exclusive right.
Right. Okay. And you said open offer when you basically offer the deal to 10.
Yeah, I hire 10 agents and I say, whoever brings me the buyer, I will pay. So that is an open listing. Okay. So they're working with multiple agents.
Yeah. Okay. And then net listing. So it's like 100,000, whatever over 100,000 you get.
Whatever over 100 that I net. So that means if they, so let's say they were listing at 500, they owe 300 and they say, as long as I net 180, as long as I net 180, you can have the rest. So if I list it 500, maybe I get 20, right? Okay. But if I list it if I get 510, I might make 30. Okay.
Right.
That's the idea behind it.
Perfect.
All right. One of the things they do on the test that I think is a little challenging is they talk about buyer representation. They may say buyer agency, but that is, for Colorado, it's an exclusive right to buy listing employment contract. So buyer representation contract on the national is a buyer listing. That is an employment contract, me and a buyer, I'm gonna go out and start showing you homes, okay? All right, now, if I am an agent and I have an interest in the property, so I am selling a property, but I actually own 20% of it. So they call that, like, I've got an interest in the property. So I would have to disclose that immediately, whether I own 1% or 100% of the property. So it'll talk about, when do I need to disclose that I am making money, this is my home, is in that offer, in that agency agreement, you have to know, Kathy McKay, that this is my house. Because I can't like hide that from the public and they don't know that it's my own home. So you're going to do that right away, okay? All right, just trying to make sure. Termination of agency. So when I say that, what kind of contract am I talking about? Termination of agency. Agency is exclusive right to buy, exclusive right to sell. Those are those are my agent and client contracts. So again, you know, if I like breach of it for some reason, we decide to get rid of it, we close, we're done. Or, the key is, if a seller who terminates the agency agreement, if I had the property under contract, so think about that. We're under contract and now all of a sudden the seller decides they don't like me, they don't want to pay me, they say we're going to terminate, they're still going to owe me the commission, okay? Because of the provisions in that contract. And do you remember the provision? It's called a holdover tenancy, or, it is a clause in the contract that says, hey, if I had your house listed and 5 buyers came through and wrote, then if you're going to fire me, I'm going to submit a list of names to you that if these people come back for the next 90 days, 120, however long I want to make it, then it's holding over, you're going to owe me. And that is to protect a seller or a buyer from firing you and going out and hiring, can't think of what I'm saying.
Like a new agent, and then your clients coming back and
not a new agent, not a new agent, just by themselves. So like they go meet at the dog park and they put a deal together without if they hire a new agent, it cancels it's null and void at that point.
The holdover.
So it's to prevent them from firing their agents and putting a deal together. Because I can't tell you how many buyers and sellers happen to meet each other on the street, type thing. Okay. So it is interesting how that works.
In that holdover agency, correct?
Holdover, it's called a broker protection clause, holdover tenancy, holdover agency. Okay, because it's saying it's protecting me, the broker, from you firing me and going out and doing that. Okay. All right, we talked about destruction of property, mutual agreement, we can get out. Okay, so that's pretty much agency. So now I'm going to go on to practice of real estate. And I know we've only been doing this for an hour, but if you need a break because you're here, just let me know. Okay. All right.
If you need a break, let me know. This is what I do for a living, damn near.
No, I have a long duration of ability to talk and not.
Right.
Okay.
You said, what is it?
Practice of real estate. It's about 13% is on that. Okay.
Practice of real estate.
It should be in the PSI candidate bulletin. I think it's called Practice of Real Estate. I'm pretty sure that's what it's called. Let's see here.
Real estate agency, real estate brokerage, title records, real estate financing, real estate.
That Practice of Real Estate, it's like the second to last one on the PSI candidate bulletin. And it says 13% of it is on there. Let me, if you can't find it, let me go out. I've got the, I should have it.
Are you looking in the book?
No, no, I'm looking at the candidate bulletin, the PSI candidate bulletin, which tells me how much of each question is on the test.
Oh, I don't think I have that.
That's in the download section.
Oh, okay.
And it will tell you, they used to tell you how many questions came. Now they tell you percentages.
Okay.
So it's in the, if you go to downloads, it's called the PSI candidate bulletin.
On the website, correct?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So this is Practice of Real Estate. So this has to do with trust accounts, escrow accounts, who's responsible, fair housing laws. This is putting a lot of the things into practice. So when someone says they're setting up an escrow account, they're setting up a trust account, they're doing it for the benefit of someone else and they're holding the money there. So they're basically holding it. So maybe it's got earnest money, it could have security deposits, etc. So it's definitely not commingled with any other account. So if I'm putting earnest money in one account, I'm going to put security deposits in another account. I'm going to have advanced rent in another one. They're not going to be mixed. There has to be more than one signer on the account. Can't just be the broker. There's got to be somebody else that can sign, because if I need the money to go to a closing, I can't be worried that the broker is not there. So when someone gets earnest money and it goes in that escrow account, that check gets cashed. And then the buyer, the way it comes back to the buyer is it goes towards their down payment. Okay. So on the settlement sheet, it's going to be a credit to the buyer at closing. So they don't have to come with an extra $5,000. They've already given that money. Okay. So that's sitting in that escrow account. If I am managing those accounts, if I was managing the escrow account, I have to make sure that I'm not adding any of my own money, no commingling, no paying my bills out of it. And the only money that I could put in is if I needed to pay, let's say they have a $5 bank service fee every month, then I can add that money to it. So, I think the biggest thing they're looking for on the national side is to make sure you understand that there are separate accounts. You don't commingle, you don't put your money in with it, okay? And then when do we reconcile? Anytime there's activity, okay? No activity, no need to reconcile. All right, then when we've got fair housing. So on the national test, you basically just have to memorize them, okay?
Yes, I was going to ask you about it because I'm like, okay, you got to study this one because but it's definitely common sense. Okay.
Absolutely. So initially here, and I can go over them all, but initially they're trying to make sure that who regulates it. So it's HUD, the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And then it says, hey, if you feel that if you're aggrieved, if you feel that you've been discriminated against, you have up to 1 year to file the claim. Okay. You can do it online or in person. Okay. And then, go to their office, and then HUD, basically they have an opportunity to go ahead and decide, hey, do we feel this claim is legitimate or not?
Okay. And then just to verify, so the fair housing laws for federal is race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, and disabilities.
Correct. Yes, I'm looking at my sheet to make sure that I have exactly what you're saying. Okay.
And I know we're not going over Colorado right now, but I do have it. So just so we could just do it in case I forget tomorrow.
Absolutely.
Race, color, national origin, religion, sex, family status, disability, creed, sexual orientation, marital status, ancestry, gender identification, and source of income.
Correct. Not
Okay.
source of income, not source of income. Source
Okay.
of income is what a lender can look at, but
Oh,
not,
these are exemptions, Okay.
okay, so I can't, it doesn't matter. I mean, I cannot give you a loan because of your source of income. Okay, all right, but your income is not a protected class.
Okay, that's fair enough. So to answer, okay, perfect.
All right. So when we're looking at, who could come against this? Well, if I am selling or renting a house, if I'm providing real estate services, doing appraisals, an appraiser could be accused of fair housing and that recently happened in Colorado where an appraiser went, so there's a street and there is a unwritten thing that purple people live on one side and blue live on the other.
Okay.
And the appraiser went, there was a purple and a blue couple in the house. It doesn't matter. The purple person was there. He gave a lower value. They fought it.
Wow. That's
They
so
fought it
regular.
because he thinks purple people should live over here.
Right.
They asked for a reevaluation. They left the blue person at home and the
Wow.
value came up. That appraiser got sued.
I hope he lost his job.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely in the news and it was like,
Oh,
oh my gosh, I mean, you're kidding.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
But
horrible.
it's a pretty real thing. I mean, I hate to
definitely
say it,
is.
but it's way more real than people realize. Okay.
Exactly. Yes.
All right. The biggest thing you're going to get asked about is race, Civil Rights Act. There's no exceptions, absolutely none. You don't get to say, oh, I didn't know. Okay. Race, no exceptions. Okay. So when we're looking at the Fair Housing Act, I mean, we've got to be sure that, if there's anything about race, typically that's your answer because that's what they're wanting to make sure that you know. Okay.
Okay.
So redlining is we pick up a red pin and that's where a lender draws a circle around an area and they say, we're not going to give loans here because this is a poor area because of the demographics. Okay. That is illegal. Okay. So a lender cannot redline. Okay. Block busting is where I, as an agent, go into the neighborhood and go, oh my gosh, did you hear? Purple people are moving into the neighborhood. It's called panic selling. I'm trying to get them to sell because of somebody else that has moved into the neighborhood that now I think is going to affect your neighbors.
So redlining only goes for lenders.
Is lenders, yes.
And then
An
block-
insurance company could do it as well, but typically on the test, they're talking about lenders. Okay.
Okay. And then block lining.
Block busting.
Okay. Yeah.
Block busting is panic selling. I'm knocking on your door and go, oh my gosh, you better get out of here before they move in, whoever they are. Okay. Steering is where I'm guiding you based on your purple. And hey, there's a great purple neighborhood over here. You want to go look at it? Okay. No.
What's it called? What steering?
Steering. Just steer. STEER, steering. Okay. And absolutely no way. Okay. Now, if we drive by the neighborhood and they go, oh my gosh, look at all those purple people. And they go, oh, we love this area. Great. But I don't say, oh, of course you would. Because you're
over here.
And and it is easier said than done. I have had clients who say, hey, we're purple. We want to live where purple people are. Can you tell us where they are? No. I can have you drive around and you look with your eyes and you tell me where you want to live. Okay. But I cannot tell you that. Okay. No way, no how. Okay. So it is definitely landlords fall into this as well. So, but as a landlord, I cannot rent to you because you're not credit worthy. We had a rental in the last few years and, we had a couple people that were like, we thought for sure you were going to rent to us. And we connected on a topic, I guess I would say, it doesn't bother me to say it was faith. And they thought for sure we were renting to them because they were Christians and we were Christians, right? Okay. And it's like, okay, but like when we look at your paperwork, like you don't make enough money, So I mean, it really was about their financial. And I know they were surprised because, you know, I build rapport with people quickly, and it's like, they thought, they were like, oh yeah, we're great. Well, then when they filled out the application, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I don't think you know, I mean, you weren't the best candidate. So again, I didn't do anything wrong, because I do have the right to refuse because of what I saw in the paper, basically. Okay. But I couldn't have decided it based on, you know, their color. Okay. Like, you know, for whatever reason. Okay. When we were renting it probably 5 years ago, maybe 7 years ago, we had people come. It had an unfinished basement at that point, and maybe it was 10 years ago. And it was a time in our market where people wanted a unfinished basement to build a grow house in the basement.
Oh yeah, okay.
Because it had high ceilings. And it was like, oh yeah, oh that's not going to work for us, you know. So because this is an older community, bunch of old people, these little duplex townhomes, yeah, they're not going to smoke coming out of the house, isn't going to go well, you know. So again, that was something that we were able to say no smoking, which would take that out, that we were not allowing that. So, but nothing, you know, they want to smoke in the park on that, I don't care, but just, you know, maybe that's something that we don't allow.
Yeah.
Right? All right, American Disabilities Act. So when you're renting a property, a building, you got to make sure you're compliant. So we have to make sure that if someone becomes handicapped while they are our renter, the key words are, we have to allow them to make the necessary changes to accommodate their handicap. Wheelchair ramp, grab rails. Okay, we don't have to. We can also take money to put the property back to its original condition. And we would put that money in an escrow account, and it would
From them.
From them, yes.
Okay.
So we could say, oh yeah, you can put in the ramp and the grab bars, but actually, you know, after you move out, we don't really want a ramp there. So, you know, can you put $300 for us to tear it down in the escrow account?
Okay.
So the way the question is typically worded, you're like, oh yeah, Kathy said we have to let them do it and we can take money. Okay, I didn't say you have to take money. So is the question saying, what can you do? Or what is the one thing that you must do? We must allow them to do that, but we don't have to take the money. That's a choice. So just sometimes it's the wording, but you know, we as students get all excited that we even know some of the answer. We just like, you know, go off the deep end.
I've been working with Fidelity Investments, getting licensed to trade stocks. So my 7, my 63, I took my 7 and I failed it. But just as real estate, so I've done the real estate course, and I'm like, okay, so I've done the SIE, which was crazy hard. Past time I could try. My 7 is worse. So it's the same with the words, the accepts kind of get you. If you don't read through them, you know, consistently, you're gonna fail. Yeah,
absolutely.
How many questions are on
the state? I mean, on the national, there's 80 to 90 typically, but only 80 count. So you don't know which 10 don't count.
Right. Okay.
And you freak out when they ask you a question about yellow daisies, and you're like, oh my God, nobody told me about yellow daisies. Okay, but they're just doing that to mess with you. So 60 count. Okay. So you have 120 minutes and for the national, and you need 60 correct to pass. Okay. On the state, there's typically 74 that count, and you have to get 53 correct, and you have 110 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Oh, I'm ready for this. I feel like I've been prepared since I started the financial world.
That's good. That is a good thing. And you know, so, and I think the hardest thing is to think about, what does the book say versus what I'm going to do, you know, how it's going to play out. Okay, we know that. So one of the things we talk about on the national is I use 80-20 as a rule for several things. So one of the things is who is exempt from federal fair housing for the Act for Older Persons, HOPA. Okay, Housing for Older Persons Act says that 80% of the people have to be 55 or older. Okay. Now, they may have a rule that says you can have grandchildren spend the night, but they can't spend more than 2 weeks, or they can't spend more than 7 nights in a month. Okay.
What was it?
HOPA, Housing for Older Persons Act.
Okay.
80-20 is the rule. 80% of the people in the complex have to be 55 or older. 80-20 also applies to co-insurance for hazard insurance, for your homeowner's insurance. 80%, when the client is getting homeowner's insurance, they want to get an 80% replacement cost policy. And
So
that
if something happens to the house, then guarantee 80% is going to be covered, correct?
correct, 80, and it's at the replacement cost value, not originally when you bought it.
Okay.
Then 80-20 is also used on a conventional mortgage. 20% down, 80% is the loan value. So 80-20 comes into play in all of those areas.
Okay. And what was the insurance one? What was that called?
The co-insurance clause, 80-20, replacement value.
Okay. Co-insurance clause. Okay.
And then you could get asked about who else is exempt from fair housing. And it is an owner occupied building, 1 to 4 units. Okay. So I live there, it's a 4-plex, and I don't want a purple person there. I actually can not, I don't have to let them rent.
Okay. One more time. You said 1 to 4. One more time.
Owner occupied building, no more than 4 units. So 1 to 4 can be exempt. So I'm not going to advertise no purple people, but I may not rent to you if I feel like, I don't know, I just don't want you being my neighbor.
Okay.
Type thing.
1 to 4, and then you have the right. Okay, that's crazy, but okay.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I live there, I might get to choose who I want to live next to type idea. And then anyone is exempt if they're not using an agent, and they're not an agent. So, if I'm selling a property and there's no broker involved, sure, they can say no to the purple person all day long if they choose to. Again, you're not going to advertise it. You're not going to be like, oh, I'm sorry, you didn't get the house because you're purple. No, I'm just not going to pick your offer. Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So as long as the owner doesn't own more than 3 properties at a time, because then they're kind of like an investor. You know what I'm saying? Okay, at that point. So just being sure of that. If I'm a church or a religious organization or a club, I can say, I don't, this is a women's only, men only, and that's okay because it's housing that is, maybe it's a sobriety house and they only have women there. Okay. So that would be an exemption. Okay. But discrimination on race, no.
And you said same with church.
Churches, yes. Religious organizations, private clubs can limit their membership, because you're not that religion, you're not, you're not a male, and we're having a male sobriety house. Then I'm gonna.
But religion, but race is always like.
Race is always like no. Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, assumed. Okay.
All right, advertising. Okay, so we know that wherever we advertise, got to have our brokerage name minimum out there, period. Okay, now then there are words that go along with advertising. So the one word is puffing. Puffing is where I say gorgeous mountain view, and I have to press my face against the window and turn like this in order to see the view. That's puffing. It's legal, okay, to puff. There are people that live in a dated home and they go, oh, it's just gorgeous. Okay. It's dated. Okay. But that's puffing. Okay.
So kind of over exaggeration.
Correct. So
and it's legal though.
It's legal. And you'll see it all the time. You'll like go to this house and you're like, what? Like they said all these updates. And I just talked to an agent yesterday, and he's getting ready to list a home. And I said, so, does it have updates? Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah. To him, I said, well, send me some pictures so I can see, we're trying to price it. Well, I go, oh, that was updated maybe in 2000. I mean, it wasn't updated like, I live in a dated home, so I understand what it means. And my home was built in 2000. But he's like, but it was nice. Yeah, my stuff is not, we have Corian, which you don't even probably know what that is. It looks like granite. But yeah, it's nice, but it's dated. Okay, so again, that's puffy. He would have said gorgeous, updated, blah, blah. And I'm like, I don't think I'd use those words. You know what I mean?
Where you come from, you
Yes.
know?
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. Puffing. I remember that word.
Misrepresentation is where I'm actually saying, oh, you know, it is a 3-bed, 2-bath, and it's not. Okay, one of the bedrooms isn't, you know, is non-conforming. It doesn't have a window or a closet. So then I'm misrepresenting the home. Negligent misrepresentation is when I'm just stupid and I like put that it has central air even though it doesn't. Okay. So I'm not trying to misrepresent them. Okay. All right. So fair housing. Okay. Again, don't advertise. Okay. Don't advertise what you're going to exclude. I mean, just limit your advertising. So the key is always describe the property, not who it's best for.
Right.
Even things now like perfect for family barbecues.
Right.
You know, I mean, it's like, well, what if I don't have a family? Are you saying I can't live there? You know, so you got to be careful with your words.
Or like nowadays they don't call it the master bedroom, correct?
Right. It's called primary.
Yeah.
Okay. And, you know, it's so funny in our MLS system, they finally changed it where it says primary bedroom, primary bathroom. But then down below, you'll have agents go, you're going to love this amazing master bedroom. It's like, no, gotta change that word. Okay.
Yeah, okay.
So, you know, that has come about just recently. As far as other topics that come under the practice of real estate, they talk about the do not call list. And if you're going to be an agent that is going to be on the phone I call it dialing for dollars, you better make sure that that list is scrubbed, meaning that if somebody is on the do not call list, you're not calling them. Okay, because that would be a violation that could get you in trouble with the Federal Communications Commission. Okay. So you're going to make sure that, you know, you're not doing that. All right. When I become an agent, okay, a real estate agent, on the national test, remember, I could become a salesperson. Salesperson works for the broker. They are an employee, so they are very heavily supervised. They will receive a W-2 unless more than 90% of their money made is from commissions.
Okay, salesperson works for a brokerage.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay.
They have a W-2.
Correct.
Okay.
All right. So there, you know, that salesperson is supervised just like we are. Even though we become a broker in Colorado, we're still supervised for 2 years. So a salesperson is supervised as well.
Right.
So, you know, just because they are a independent, you know, if they're an independent contractor in Colorado, they still have supervision. And that managing broker is still responsible. They call it vicarious liability for the actions of the agent. So if I am working at a brokerage and I think you are doing things that are illegal, I'm going to get rid of you. Okay. And remember that if I fire the agent, okay, they can just go to another agency. They have not lost their license. The real estate commission gives the license and they take it away. So it doesn't mean that they can't be an agent. They just go to RE/MAX tomorrow. No big deal. All right. As an independent contractor, I'm going to make sure I collect my own taxes. I'm a 1099 employee. And I've got to make sure that I'm never in a situation where somebody thinks I'm hourly, because that is not the way it works. I'm paid a commission based on the sales price of the home. Okay. And when you are an independent contractor, you will complete a W-9 for the brokerage, which will say, this is how I'm going to get a 1099 from them. All right. When I'm working as an agent, I have to take care and make sure that I follow due diligence. Due diligence says that in a transaction, I have duties that I have to make sure I'm paying attention to. State laws, there's time, dates and deadlines. If you ask me, hey, do you think that field across the street is ever going to be built on? I just don't say no. I go, hey, why don't we go to the county? I don't go to the county without them. I want them to hear the same information I heard. And I want them, we're going to do our due diligence to find out what is going on. So I've got to make sure that, you know, in most states, the word caveat emptor comes into play, and that says buyer beware. Okay. So the buyer needs to check that out, but I don't want to be an agent that says it's fine and then find out that it's not. So I have a certain amount of due diligence and responsibility that I'm responsible to the client for as well. Okay. So again, anything outside of my scope, I don't know anything about it. I better get an attorney or another agent who does. Yeah. Otherwise, I'm putting myself at risk. When you are an agent and you become licensed, the only way that you get your little R, okay, that says you're a realtor is when you join the National Association of Realtors. You take the ethics course and you get your little R. That says you are a real estate agent, okay, a realtor. All right, I'm sniffing for some reason. I think I'm having bad allergies, but I don't know.
Going on, yeah.
It seems like people are having that. One of the rules is, as an agent, I cannot receive my commission directly. It has to go to my brokerage. They split it out, then I receive the commission. Yeah. I cannot get paid directly at the table. Okay. Yeah. Anyone unlicensed, okay, they are not getting a portion of the commission. I could pay them hourly to show. I can't. They can show property if they have a license, but an unlicensed assistant could go to an open house and they can hand out pre-printed material, but they can't discuss price. They can't get into any of that. That would be a violation against their, because they're not an agent, actually.
That's also not very, very common because it's a lot of liability.
Correct, absolutely. So I may have an unlicensed assistant door knock the neighborhood for me for my open house, but then I'm going to be the agent there doing it. Okay. If I wanted someone to show a property for me and they were not licensed, and I know we're doing Colorado tomorrow, but I have to call the agent. They have to ask the seller if it's okay to let this unlicensed person in, and they'd be dumb to let them in. Okay.
Yeah.
The whole idea of getting your license is so that you are protected, that somebody has checked them out type thing.
Right, yeah, of course.
All right, antitrust laws. So we know that there are laws that were put into place. It's part of it's called the Sherman Act. And it's basically saying, if you violate these are big ticket, big dog items. And the first one is price fixing. So that is where I am saying, hey, the going rate is this amount, and tell everybody that's the going rate so that we can get a higher commission. Price fixing, completely illegal. I can say I charge 6, I charge whatever, but I cannot tell you what the going rate is. Okay. Another antitrust law is market allocation, and that's where I say you can only sell houses over here. No, when you get your license in the state of Colorado, you can sell in all of Colorado, but you and I could say, hey, we've got a buyer. I'm going to show the west side of town. You show the east. That'd be fine. But I can't tell you that you can't come into my territory. That is not legal. Okay. We cannot divide up, and we can't refrain from showing property from a certain brokerage because we don't like them. That is not allowed. That's group boycotting. So group boycotting says we don't like that brokerage. Let's not show their listings. Not allowed. Okay. Another antitrust violation is a tie-in agreement. And that is where I say, hey, by the way, I sell Amway. You know, if you're going to buy a house from me, I also want you to sign up for my Amway program. Okay. That is a tie-in. I'm tying something to the sale. That is an antitrust violation. And the penalties can be $1 million, 10 years in prison. Big deal. So you're not like messing around with this. This is not something that we play around with. Okay.
Let's see. 2 or more businesses finance another business. So boycotting would be like.
So like there's a Redfin is a brokerage. Okay.
Right.
So
They're like-
let's say that I don't like Redfin because they discount their commissions and I just don't like them. Okay. I can't say to my client, hey, I'm not going to show Redfin. If you find a listing, I can't boycott them. Nor can I go into my brokerage and say, hey, we're not going to show Redfin properties. Okay. That's illegal. That's group boycotting.
Okay.
All right. Do you want to break or are you good?
We go. Let's keep
Okay.
going.
All right. Okay. No problem. All right. So moving along. So those were both 13% of the test. So now I'm down to, I've got financing is 10%. So I'll probably do that one next and, see how, I think that's probably the best one to do next.
Okay. And then I just have a question. I was looking through it just to touch base. One thing that always kind of got me, and probably need clarification now, definitely, real property versus personal property and the chattel, right?
Real property. Okay. So I can talk about that now. I actually even have some notes about it. Okay. So the personal property is movable. Okay. And so you want to think about it. It's personal. I can take it with me. Okay. Real has to do with real estate. It's immovable. So if I have sand delivered on my driveway, it's personal property at the moment because it has not been put into my house, put into my sandbox, put into my landscaping. Okay. So, and if I want to change real property and make it personal, I would sever it. So it's either annexed, added in, or severed. And so I cut up my deck wood. It's made of wood. So I cut up my deck, it becomes wood. That becomes personal property.
Okay. So rose bushes, they're real property because they're growing there, but cut them off. Don't put them in the contract, personal property.
Think of it like this. Rose bush is a kind of a hard one. Think about, I'll use rose bush, but then I'll talk about it differently. I want to cut roses from my bush and take them before I leave because I'm sad and I'm going to miss my roses. Fine, cut the roses. Okay, dig up the rose bush? No, I cannot because that is Fructus naturalis. It comes back naturally each year. It is real estate. It is real property. So I cannot take that rose bush unless in the contract to buy and sell between the buyer and the seller, we exclude it. Then the seller can dig it up, take it, maybe we put a new one in, maybe we don't, okay? But the trick question on the test is, if I'm listing your home and you go, oh, I love this rose bush, I want to take it with me, okay? I say, that's great. We're going to put in the contract, it's excluded. I put it in our agreement, our agency agreement. Buyer comes in, writes the offer. It's 10 o'clock at night. I'm tired. I don't really pay attention. You don't really read it. We sign it. It does not say rosebush and front yard excluded. It's staying, okay, unless I can negotiate differently. Okay. So it's going to come down to what you use, Maria, the method, how it's adapted, what's the relationship between the parties? Is it a tenant? You're trying, but then at the very end, what did they agree upon in the contract? Okay.
And then I remember there was like an example. So chandel, it's like a piece of property. So like, it's like a
chattel is any personal property. It could be
a light fixture.
Not chattel. Okay. Light fixtures attached. Chattel is it. Just think of chattel means personal property. It means this cup, my phone, this chair I'm sitting in, those pictures on the wall. Chattel is personal property.
Okay.
That it's not a trick like, oh, chattel is something different. Chattel is just my seller's possessions, personal property.
Okay.
Okay, so no trick on that. Let's see if I have anything else written down. One thing that could trick you up is a lease is personal property. Because the lease, if I have a lease to rent this house, you sell the house, the lease stays, okay? That tenant can stay in the property. So it's not going away, okay? So the lease is with the person. So if they have a right to stay in the property, even if you sell it, the lease still stays. Okay. All right, let's, if you have some other question, absolutely reach out, say it.
Okay.
Otherwise,
No, I don't.
okay, so I'm going to financing. So I'm just going to talk about different things that have to do with financing. So we've got points. So discount points. There used to be 1 to 3 questions about discount points. Now people are saying there are 5 to 7. I find it hard to believe because it doesn't seem like that difficult of a topic. When I say discount point, you say, I got to know what the mortgage amount is. Okay. Okay. Discount point, got to know the mortgage. Don't care what they paid for the house, how much it was under contract, how much they overpaid. All I care about is what is the mortgage. Okay. Because a discount point is a percentage of the mortgage. Okay. So 1% loan origination fee is a type of a point. Okay. A discount point may be another point, 1%, that where we are like buying down the rate. So let's do an example, even though today isn't math day, but let's just do an example. Okay. So the home is, so write down $750,000. It is a conventional mortgage. So what does that tell you right away?
20% down.
Okay, and so, but we need the loan amount, so it would be 80%.
So 80% of that $750,000.
Yeah, we get the loan amount, and they paid 1.5 points. So what did they pay?
70,000 times 80%. So 600,000 is that loan, correct?
Yeah, let me do it so I make sure that I'm doing the same thing. Yep. Okay, go ahead. Times 80%. And then times 1.5. So the point, 1.5% is $9,000.
Okay. And that's okay. And so that's the discount point. And so what does that exactly mean?
So that means that that buyer has chosen to pay $9,000 to buy down the rate for whatever reason. So if the rate right now is
the interest rate.
The interest rate. Okay. So if the interest rate is 5.25 and they want to buy it down to 3% like it was a few months ago, then they may pay $9,000 up front to buy that rate down, because their payment, let's say their payment drops, I'm sniffing, sorry. Let's say it drops $250. So in order to calculate that out, that's going to take 36 months. So I took $9,000, divided it by, they're saving them $250. So in 36 months, 3 years, they will break even.
Okay, so now, you're basically putting more money down to lower the interest rate.
Yeah, and if they are going to live there for the rest of their life, it's worth it maybe to them. Okay, but typically not going to be worth it. That's really a high price to pay to buy the rate down. Okay. But so a discount point, discount point, got to know the mortgage amount. It's a percent of the mortgage amount. So that you just got to drill that into your brain. Okay.
And how do you know what percentage it is?
They'll tell you. It'll say, they're paying 2 discount points. So it's 2%.
Okay.
1
2%.
discount point, 1%.
Okay.
All right. So again, they're typically trying to buy that rate down. Loan to value. Okay, so loan to value, if you have to figure out the loan to value ratio, okay, if they say, what is the loan to value percent? You're like, well, I don't know. Okay, if you have 2 numbers, you divide the big number into the smaller number and you're going to get a percentage. Okay, so if I have 100, so write this down and let's see. And again, the only reason I'm doing some of this math is because it really comes in the finance section. So if I have a loan for 160,000 and the home is worth 200,000, what is my loan to value ratio? So you got 2 numbers, don't know what to do with them, divide.
So you would just do 200,000.
No, a smaller number divided by bigger number to get.
See. Okay. My notes would be all wrong then.
Yeah,
Divided by big. Oh, and then you would get, okay, that makes sense. So 160,000 divided by 200,000. So it'd be 80%.
80%. Yeah, 80% LTV. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So, when they're giving
Okay,
you
I get it. So it's the ratio of
how much
what
they're putting
more
down.
than you own, the ratio, so 80. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. Yay. We have a light bulb. Yay.
Yes.
Okay. We know that interest is what we pay to the lender to borrow the money. We know that when they give you the APR, the annual percentage rate, okay, that's just, that's looking at it, that's measuring the interest rate and any other fees that you would be paying. If I'm buying a house, I want to try to lock in my rate so that it doesn't go up over the next few months. If I am doing a conventional loan, okay, for the test, 80-20, if I'm not putting 20% down, okay, then I will be required to pay PMI, private mortgage insurance. And that is saying it's protecting a lender in case the borrower defaults for whatever reason, okay?
Okay, so conventional loan, you'll have to
you'll have to add
Okay.
PMI to the payment if you have put down less than 20%. So
Okay.
that's why everyone wants 20% down
Okay.
to avoid PMI. For the
Perfect.
test, the way that PMI goes away is when you have 22% equity in the home. And you know that equity is the difference between what the property sells for or would sell for minus what you owe. That is your equity.
What you would sell for.
Minus what you owe, that's your equity.
Okay.
So if my home's worth 700,000 and I don't owe anything on it, I have $700,000 worth of equity. Okay. If I owe 400, I have $300,000 worth of equity.
And you said PMI will go away after 22% of equity is built.
Correct. Okay. So, as a homeowner, I'm kind of paying attention to when that happens so that I can get rid of it if I,
Right.
So legally they're to drop it when you get to the 22%.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Cool. That's
All
exciting.
right.
Okay.
PITI, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance. Your P&I is that, we can get that from the mortgage factor chart. I'll go look at that in a second. Okay. But the taxes and insurance are a yearly payment divided by 12, and that is added monthly to your payment.
One more time.
Okay. So PITI, P&I, okay, principal and interest is a calculation off of the mortgage factor chart. Okay. So a lender will say, okay, if you're doing a 30-year loan at about 5%, here is your P&I. Your taxes and your insurance are variable. You may live in a city where the taxes are a little higher or a little lower. Your insurance, maybe your insurance is high because you've had 5 claims against your homeowners. So your taxes and insurance, they're going to take the yearly taxes, the yearly insurance premium divided by 12, and then that's going to be added to your payment. So I'm going to give you an example. Your taxes are $3,600. Your insurance is $2,400 a year. So if my P&I was $2,000, principal and interest, $2,000 is my payment. I'm going to add my taxes. I'm going to divide taxes by 3,600 divided by 12. So I'm going to add 300 for taxes, and I'm going to divide 2,400 by 12. I'm going to get 200. So my total payment, PITI, will be $2,500. P&I, taxes and insurance divided by 12. Okay. If my payment goes up and I have a fixed mortgage where the P&I never change, the reason my payment would go up or down is if my taxes or my insurance went up or down. Okay. If you have a mortgage yearly, the lender will do an assessment of your escrow account and make sure that you're going to have enough money in there next year when they pay taxes and insurance. And if there is more than $50, that's the requirement, more than $50 extra, they have to return it to you, okay? All right, then there are a couple things I want to talk about under financing. So we know a promissory note is I promise to pay. By the way, Bree, I'm not talking to you anymore because I'm not seeing you, but I know you're still there, whether you're there listening or not. I just thought I would say that, made me think of it. Okay, so a promissory note is something where I am promising to pay. It's going to be definitely a mortgage. I could use a promissory note for my earnest money. If I don't have all of it, maybe I promise to pay it before closing, has to come due before closing. Otherwise, it's not earnest money, it's down payment. And, maybe I'm going to get paid in a few days, that type of thing. Okay. So when we are signing that and we are giving the promissory note, it's called a security instrument, and it's pledging that I'm going to make my payment and my property is my collateral. Deed of trust. So you've got the trustor, the trustee, and the beneficiary. Beneficiary is the lender. The trustor is the borrower, and the trustee is usually an independent third party. Colorado, it would be the public trustee, would be the county. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a title theory state versus a lien theory state. Okay, because I think and I'm going to read you a little bit of it because I feel like it's one of those things that you kind of have to hear it. So if a state uses a deed of trust as their primary security instrument, okay, then it is a title theory state because the lender holds the legal title until the mortgage is paid in full.
Okay, so deed of trust,
title theory, the lender is holding, the trustee or the lender's holding that legal title. The borrower has equitable title. Equitable means before you make all your payments. All right. In a foreclosure, we have what's called a power of sale clause saying that, hey, if there's a deed of trust, the lender can use a non-judicial foreclosure process to go ahead and put the property up for sale because you haven't made your payment. When we've got a mortgage, we've got two people. We've got the lender and the borrower. And in a lien theory state, so I'm going to read this, okay, they use a mortgage as the security interest, okay, and it's referred to as a lien theory state because the mortgage places a lien on the property. The lender holds the lien and the borrower holds legal title, okay? Foreclosure becomes necessary, then the lender does a judicial foreclosure. Okay, they have to go to court for that foreclosure.
When it's a lien theory.
That's in a lien theory state, yes.
Okay.
So online, and we'll talk about it tomorrow about Colorado specific, okay?
Okay.
So when you have a security instrument, when you have a promissory note, a loan, there's going to be clauses in there. So some of the clauses, the first one is a defeasance clause. And I use the word defeat. So in a defeasance clause, I'm defeating the lender. It says they have to immediately release it when you pay it off. You defeat them, you pay it off, it goes away, okay? Acceleration clause says you don't make your payment, we're going to accelerate it. It's coming due right now. Okay, we're accelerating it. So miss one payment, they can call the whole loan due at once. Okay?
Oh shit. Okay. Oh, I do see acceleration clause, assistance to lender. So would that be considered like foreclosure?
Yeah, we would be going into foreclosure. You miss the payment, we use the clause. The due on sale clause is a type of alienation clause because it says it requires the borrower to repay the loan due on sale. When we go to sale, on resale, and again, they can call it due.
Okay, and I do see your defeasance clause. Okay, perfect.
Prepayment penalty is, we don't want a loan that has a prepayment penalty because that's going to say that, hey, we are going to, if you pay it off before 30 years, then you're going to be fined. well, I mean, we don't want a prepayment penalty. So nowadays, when you get a loan, there will be a page that you sign that says there is no prepayment penalty, okay?
Okay.
Used to be common, they're rare now, thank goodness, okay? All right, so we talked about conforming conventional loans. We talked about 80-20. As far as, you know, if it says a conforming loan, it says it meets the loan limits put out by Freddie and Fannie and Ginnie Mae, okay? If it's non-conforming, okay, then there's typically going to be a higher interest rate because there's more risk for the lender, okay?
Right.
All right, and these should be familiar because of what you've done with some of your financial stuff.
Yeah, REITs. Okay, so, and this always kind of got me, so maybe you could dumb it down. Mortgager, mortgagee. I feel like they're backwards or something.
They are backwards. So the mortgage, or we think the lender is the giver. In our brain, we go, oh, the lender's giving the mortgage. No, the borrower is giving a promissory note to the mortgagee, who is the lender. But we get confused because we think, oh, they're giving the loan. No, the buyer, the borrower is giving the promissory note.
Okay, so the mortgagor is giving the promissory note. So
right,
the
that's the buyer.
buying the
Mortgagor is
house.
the buyer, the borrower, and they're giving the note to the mortgagee, who is the lender.
Okay. See, yep, I'm glad we clarified that. I thought I knew it was backwards somehow.
Right, yes. And if they talk about a jumbo loan, okay, you're like, okay, it's obviously going to be jumbo. It's going to be for a lot of money, but it's also non-conforming. So it exceeds whatever the loan limits are. And then there are certain banks that do jumbo loans. It's just a different type. And of course, the interest rate may be higher, okay?
Okay.
FHA loan, one of the questions they've been asking on the test is like, hey, if you want to go get an FHA loan, you go to a FHA office. Okay, there isn't an FHA office. You fill out an application with an FHA approved lender. You have to use an FHA approved appraiser, but they try to trick you like, oh, you go to the FHA office. Okay, I mean, there really is an FHA office, but you don't go there. Okay, so they're trying to trick you on that. Okay, so FHA is 3.5% down, 96.5 is the loan amount. Okay.
How much is the loan amount?
96.5. And because you don't have 20% down, you are going to pay MIP. It's like PMI.
Oh my gosh, hold on.
Okay.
MIP.
MIP. It's a mortgage insurance premium. The difference between that and conventional PMI, MIP lasts for the life of the loan. And the catch with it is that there are, there's an upfront funding fee plus a monthly fee.
Okay.
So my daughter had an FHA loan, and a couple of years ago, maybe last year, I don't remember, we got her refinanced to a conventional mortgage to get rid of her, I think it was $110 a month of MIP. And the reason we were able to do that is because her equity had grown, so her ratios changed.
Okay, so then she was able to refinance
to and go into a conventional product.
Okay. And what does the P stand for in MIP?
Mortgage insurance premium. And in PMI, it's private mortgage insurance.
And that 22% equity in the house, then you drop
goes away on conventional. MIP FHA stays for the life of the loan. Okay. So unless you refinance, you have MIP.
Okay, perfect. Okay. Let's see. There's something that I know I have to touch base on because I won't.
Go ahead, and then I'll keep going.
Yeah, no, keep going, and then
okay.
I'll find it
somewhere. All right. FHA and VA have lending limits in each county. I don't know what it is right now. It was 684. I don't know, 250. I have no idea. It was like 684, 685 in Jefferson County last time I looked. That was that's the biggest FHA loan you could get. So if your home is $900,000, nobody's doing FHA because it's 3.5% down. That's above the loan limit. Okay.
You know, I do remember a question on the exam, and it was like, a veteran put down this much, but there was a limit. And so it was like, could he pay out of cash or something? I'll have to
He
take.
could pay additional cash. If
Uh-huh.
if the vet or the FHA person has the cash, yes, they can. So I
Okay.
could do FHA if the home is 900,000 and let's say the limit is 700 in those county. Sure, I can pay the extra 200,000, but the whole idea of going FHA is that you don't have a lot of money a lot of times. So who's handing me 200 grand? I'd love to know, you know, type thing. So it's yes, but they can do that. And if the appraisal doesn't come in, they too can pay out, you know, pay the cash out of pocket. Okay. All right. But so they can make up the difference. It just doesn't happen that often. Okay. A VA loan also has a VA, you got to go to a VA lender, got to go to use a VA appraiser. VA loans use a CRV, a certificate of reasonable value, which is the same as an appraisal. The vet has to qualify. They have to meet and get their certificate of eligibility. And typically the vet benefits are for the vet and their spouse, and they're going to have to show that they spent 181 days in active duty.
Okay.
But again, mostly you get asked about the certificate of eligibility. Okay. Farm loans versus rural loans. Yeah, if it's a farm, you're going to use USDA, and Farm Service Agency. If it's a rural area, that's an area with less than 10,000 people, you're going to use a rural development loan. Okay.
Okay.
A loan that is amortized, I don't say the word very
That's where I
well.
was going. Yep, the loan types.
Okay. So, oh, Latte, you are such a pain.
Oh,
He's such a lover. I mean, he like comes during the day.
yeah, he just wants to. Oh,
And I wish he was super sweet like this, but it's not true. He's faking that. Okay. He's trying to say, get a Bernie doodle. And then, but when you talk to mom, I would say, oh, be careful, because they are really stubborn.
yeah.
Okay. All right. So the different types of loans. So a fixed amortized loan basically stays the same for the life of the loan. So if you go 5% for 30 years, it's 5% for 30 years. Okay. There's no getting away from it. Okay. It's not dropping. It's not changing. Your P&I will stay the same for the life of the loan. The only thing that will change would be your taxes and insurance. Okay. Now, if I have a partially amortized loan, that would be like a balloon payment. So let's say I'm borrowing 400,000. 350,000 is going to be amortized over 30 years, going to stay the same, partially amortized. The other 50,000 is going to be given in a balloon in 5 years when I get my bonus.
You have to pay it all.
Yes, then, well, that 50,000, the rest of it is staying the same, but the balloon payment comes in 5 years, and then I'm paying the whole 50,000 at once. Okay. So that's partially amortized. So part of it for the life of the loan stays the same, balloon payment at the end of the term. Okay.
And that's so the balloon payment is also the partial amortized. Same thing.
The balloon payment, the balloon type of a mortgage, having a balloon, part of your loan is partially amortized and the balloon is due at the end. Okay. So it's within the same sentence, I guess I would say.
Okay, so same thing. Okay, perfect.
All right, an ARM, an adjustable rate mortgage, is tied to an index. So whatever's going on in the economy, it's going to be tied to that, going up, going down, which why it's going to be scary, because we don't know what could happen. So your payment could jump $200 next year, or could go down if the economy changed.
This is okay, market economy. Okay.
So it's tied to the index. It will have what is called a margin. So let's say it'll say you're starting at 3%. It's typically going to have a lower interest rate. It can go up 2 points every year for 5 years, and it'll cap at 10%.
That's still crazy.
So it's scary because, so you get in when it's really good and you just hope that it doesn't go up. But if it does, that is when we have what is called negative amortization, meaning like, ooh, the market is dropping, but your payment is going up and now you can't afford to sell the house because it's called underwater. Your home isn't worth what you thought it was. So that happens with ARMs frequently, okay?
ARMs is what you call it, which is that adjustable, correct?
Adjustable rate mortgage, an ARM, yes.
Okay. Is that it for loans?
Say that again.
Is that it for loans?
No, I'm not done yet. Okay.
Okay.
So there's still a bridge loan, okay? And a bridge loan is where I own my house. It's worth 500,000 and I have 200,000 of equity in the home. I'm selling it. I'm buying the next house, but we haven't closed yet. But I need that money to buy the next home. So I'm going to take out what's called a bridge loan against my equity for this short time. It's going to bridge between the sales, okay, so that I can use my equity, buy the next home. So I'll have a payment at my new home. I'll have a little payment on the bridge, the portion I borrowed, and I'll have my old payment for a few months until we all close. A lot of people will use a home equity line of credit in order to get that equity out to buy the next house.
Okay.
Not super common at the moment, okay? Owner financing. We've got a purchase money mortgage or an owner will carry. We also have what's called a land contract. And I don't like it, land contract, contract for deed. And it basically says, I'm gonna move in, we've got a vendor and a vendee, and we're gonna make payments, okay, to the seller, and the seller's gonna hold on to the title while we make those installments. And then when I make the final installment, he's gonna give me title. So that's why they call it seller financing, because I'm basically letting you make payments. I'm not getting all my money at once.
Yeah.
Okay, so vendor, vendee, okay, a purchase money mortgage, the seller is giving me the purchase money to buy the property. Owner will carry is where I'm giving you maybe a little bit of it, so maybe your mortgage, you can only get 200,000 in a mortgage, but the home is 220. Maybe I carry 20 for you, okay? And you get a first and I'm a second, okay? And you owe me that over the next 5 years, something like that.
Okay.
Sorry, I keep snipping. All right. Lending process. Okay. You apply for your loan. That's all fine. When we talk about the primary mortgage market versus the secondary mortgage market, the primary mortgage market originates the loans. So they are responsible. They're the banks, the commercial banks, savings and loans. They may be your credit union, your mortgage broker, okay? And remember the difference between a mortgage broker and a mortgage banker. So a broker has all these investors he can get money from. He's brokering the deal. So he matches the consumer with the lender to get the loan made. A mortgage banker just uses their Wells Fargo money, Chase money, okay? The secondary mortgage market, okay, they put together packages. They put together a pool of mortgages and then they sell them on the secondary market because they're trying to pull them together. And then the secondary market is trying to create more money for that primary market. So when we go into the secondary mortgage market, we get into Fannie, Freddie, and Ginnie Mae. So when you're looking at those, the way I remember, and I think I say it in the class, Freddie, it says Freddie, Fannie, and Ginnie, they're lending institutions that buy loans from other lenders and then they invest them. The way I remember is Fannie sits on her Fannie, mostly government, FHA, VA, some conventional. Freddie, nerdy conventional, okay, so mostly conventional loans. Ginnie does special assistance, okay, so she's trying to help people that need, special assistance.
Okay.
All right, Truth in Lending Act. It's called TILA, the Truth in Lending Act. It was created to make sure that the consumer knew the truth about the money that they are, paying on a loan. Because let's face it, when you get your documents, your loan documents, you don't really understand much. So the
Right.
Truth in Lending says we're going to make sure the consumer knows what the APR is, because it's going to be a little higher than the rate. They don't really understand that. There's all these fees involved. So it's trying to be sure that the consumer is aware of what they're actually paying, what the truth is. So they have to be sure that they talk about trigger terms. Okay, so if I'm having an ad, I have to make sure that I'm disclosing the down payment, how many payments, what the interest rate is. I can't be only giving you P&I. I've got to be giving you the whole package because I've got to be telling you the truth. Hold on here. Hold on, I'm still teaching. Just tell somebody. All right, then Regulation Z. So in online, there is a document in the download section, and it's called RESPA. I think it says RESPA, Truth in Lending. It was written for an agent, a student that I got to pass that did not speak English. They were not, it was their second language. It was hard for them. And so I made this. It talks about RESPA, talks about truth in lending, loan estimates, closing disclosures.
And what is it?
It's in the download section. It'll probably be labeled RESPA. Okay. It'll have the word RESPA in it. And it basically goes into kind of what is the nitty gritty that you need to know about those topics. And again, it was written because my student was struggling with some of these topics because, we all speak English and we're having a hard time. So can you imagine this isn't your language? Right. So just definitely go out, print this off and study it for those topics, because basically what I would be saying to you now is what's already typed up. Okay, so just going over RESPA, truth in lending, environmental phase 1 and phase 2. Wow. It's got super fund, talks about the super fund, talks about underground storage tanks. These were just topics that as he was going through the course, he was like, whew, I'm struggling. And I was like, okay, let's make sure we're doing it. Okay.
That's awesome of you.
Yeah.
Okay, and real quick, type of deeds.
Okay, all right, yeah, hold on. Let me finish out this one, make sure I've got everything in this. Predatory lending, we know that's where lenders were taking advantage of people. Usury is when someone is charging you in excess of the amount allowed, okay? Lending money at a really high rate, so they're using you, they're abusing you. You probably understand things about underwriting and debt to income ratios, credit scores. They're going to look at your FICO score and make sure that, it's credit worthy, basically. And the big thing is when somebody goes in to buy a property, we want to make sure that they don't make any sudden changes in their careers, because that will affect their financing for sure. Okay.
Or buying cars.
Yeah, buying cars, having babies. Oh dear. All right, maybe I am getting sick and I just don't know it. Okay. All right, so types of deeds, I can definitely go over that. So let me, I know them, but I was going to see which topic it was under so we could cross it off. Because I wish they put them in the right order so I could just figure that out, but that is not what they did. Okay. All right. So it's under transfer of title, which I probably would have done close to next because it's 8% of the test.
Okay.
Okay. So when you buy title insurance, the seller is typically paying for it, not always, but typically paying for it. And even though the premium is paid at the closing, it's backwards. It's for the time that, it's backwards. It's not forwards, okay? They are proving that they have marketable title. That's what they're trying to prove. A title search is where the title company goes out and searches. Are there any mineral rights, subsurface rights? Who owes what against the property? Any liens or encumbrances? And so the title company wants to make sure that it is marketable and insurable, obviously. If there is a cloud on title, a cloud is something that would stop me from transferring it to you free and clear. That may be that you've got a judgment against you, that we need a satisfaction of judgment. So there could be some defect on the title that we need to get rid of, okay? The most common cloud when you pull title work is that the seller owes a mortgage. But as long as the house is selling for more than the mortgage, you're fine. It's just what if it was for more than what you're selling it for, okay? All right, so then deeds. So your deed is, it's written, there's a grantor and a grantee. Grantor has to be signing it. Title passes, grantee receives it. So grantor and grantee, okay? The deed is the legal document that is conveying title to the real property, to the new owner, okay? All right, oh dear, all right. So we've got the best deed, okay? The deed that covers all, okay, is the word general, A-L-L. It's gonna go all the way back to when the home was built. So that is it's got all of the covenants, all of the warranties. It is the best coverage for the buyer. And the covenants that a general warranty deed has is the covenant of season. Okay, so the grantor is holding title and possession. They have the right to convey it. So that's the covenant, the right to convey it. So they can convey it to someone else. Covenant against encumbrances, meaning you're going to get the property free and clear. And the warranty is forever. So at any point in time, if somebody comes up and says, hey, you have a title issue, they say, hey, we have a general warranty deed, title company will hire attorneys and take care of it, okay? Special warranty deed only has two promises, two warranties basically. And it's saying, hey, this is what I got, and I either didn't live there or this is only for the time I owned it, okay? So special warranty, and in Colorado, so I grew up in real estate, always asking for general, okay? Now we are told to give special. And it's because I'm sure people got sued for things that happened 20, 30 years ago when they didn't own it. And they're like, why am I being part of this? So now most sellers give special, which says, hey, I'll give you what I have for when I owned it. I may or may not have lived there, okay?
Okay, that makes sense.
All right. And then the other covenants with general, they talk about quiet enjoyment. That means nobody's going to knock on your door and take the house away, or there's going to be a problem. They would. Right. It doesn't mean it's going to be quiet. And further assurance says, again, going all the way back and forever.
Perfect.
Okay, bargain and sale deed. So bargain and sale deed is the promises in there are none. They're just implying. So it says it's most often used if it's a tax or a foreclosure sale, because there's no express warranty against encumbrances and there's just not a lot of protection. So it's not something we use very often, okay? A quit claim deed says we are going to give nominal interest. We're either going to add somebody or we're going to get rid of somebody, or we're going to clear a cloud on title. Okay, so a quit claim deed is done quickly, gets rid of somebody, adds somebody, and or clears up a cloud on title. Okay. All right. Those are pretty much, I mean, yes, there's a personal representative's deed if somebody has died. Typically, you don't get asked about those, okay? So, the deed is, when you have a deed, it's got to name the grantee, grantor has to sign it. Yes, they have to be of legal age and mental capacity. There's going to be a granting clause in the deed. The Latin word is habendum, okay, to have and to hold. There's going to be consideration, $1, a hug, legal description, any limitations, and remember, an appurtenance runs with the land. Okay, that's going to come with it. The grantor has to sign it, has to be delivered and accepted. And the reason that a deed typically will get recorded is just so that the county has it out there. They know that this has happened. Okay.
Okay, I know you keep saying the grantor signs it, but who would the grantor grantee be?
The grantor is the owner. I am signing the deed to the grantee. The grantee doesn't have to sign it. They just have to be named. So the grantor is granting the deed to the grantee. Okay.
Okay, so the seller of the house, so I used to own this house, I'm the grantor, I'm signing and saying, hey, this is for you now, you take it, okay.
Correct.
So
Yes.
the buyer, basically.
Correct. To the grantee is the buyer. Okay. All right. All right. When we talk about escrow, closing in escrow, closing in person, if they're closing in escrow, they are hiring somebody, seller's going to deposit their stuff, buyer's going to do their side. They're not meeting, they're closing in escrow. Could be a title company, could be an attorney. They could have an independent company that does it. So they're managing the transaction. Okay. When we are closing in person, that title rep is typically at the table, passing around the papers that we're signing, but the broker is ultimately responsible for what's happening at the table. When we go to a closing, there are items that are prorated, there are items that are fixed costs, prorated, HOA, water, propane. There will be bills that the buyer or the seller would be responsible for, whether or not they lived there or not. Taxes, okay. Let's see what else is on here that I can, without going into like, debits and credits. Income tax, okay, there is a transfer tax a lot of times when you're selling a property to transfer it into their name. So do you understand that, where you move the decimal over 3 times? If they say, if the tax rate is 30 mils, you move it over to multiply it. Okay. Let me go grab like a Kleenex. My nose will not stop running. Hello, dogs. Can you move, please? Move, guys. I've touched my face about 2,500 times.
Yeah.
I figured it was time to do that. All right. What were we talking about? Oh, the like tax rate, transfer tax. So if there's a transfer tax, so if the property is 350,000, so write that down, and the tax rate is 0.03, okay, then you're going to convert it to 0.0003 and multiply it, okay, to get what the tax rate is.
Okay, you said how much is the property taxes?
So the transfer tax, if the transfer tax rate is 0.03, then you're going to convert 0.03. Basically, you can either divide by 100 or you can just move it over. So it will end up being 0.000. There are 3 zeros and a 3. Okay. But you have to convert it. Otherwise, you'll get 105,000, 105, 1,050. You'll get a big number versus $105. Okay.
You can just divide that by 100.
Correct.
Or move it 3 decimals. You said.
Yep. Yeah. So it's however you want to remember that. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Let me keep going. Foreclosures, we've talked about. Short sales. If they use the word REO and they say that, the property is part of a distressed property and it's REO, that's called real estate owned, and that is a bank owned property. So the bank, it's been foreclosed on, the bank buys it and now they own it. That is an REO. Warranties, so if you buy a new build, you'll get a structural warranty, maybe a roof warranty, maybe a systems warranty for furnace and hot water heater. If I am selling a regular home, one of my agents is selling a home that they've got a bunch of deferred maintenance. the furnace, the hot water heater, they're way old. We're giving them a home warranty for a year so that if the furnace or hot water heater go out in the first year, they will replace it. So a buyer and a seller, either one can go ahead and pay for the home warranty. That either party can pay for that. Okay.
And that's just in the contract, like, hey, I want you to pay for it. Or no, you pay for it.
Yes, correct. All right, let's see. So the next section that I would probably go over would be property ownership. I think we've talked about a lot of it. You know, we know that we haven't talked about this, but I assume you know it. Land extends to the center of the earth. Air rights, surface rights, subsurface rights. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I think you know, real estate is your interests and everything that you get your bundle of legal rights when you buy a property. Any improvement is anything attached to the land, artificial or not. So it could be the sidewalks, the structure. You have your, so do you remember your bundle of rights? PCEED, possession, control, enjoyment, exclusion, and disposition.
Let me write that one more down.
Yeah, bundle of legal rights, PCEED, possession, control, exclusion, enjoyment, and disposition. So I can possess it, I can control, like I don't want you to come over today. I can enjoy it, I can smoke marijuana because it's legal now. I can exclude, I can say no, I'm not gonna let you know, purple people. I mean, I wouldn't do that because again, it's race, but, and then I can dispose it, I can give it in my will. My husband's coming home and the dogs know that when he walks back in, it's time to eat. And so they're going to bark and go crazy. And then dispose of it again. I can will it or transfer it, sell it. Okay. We talked about fixtures, Maria. We talked about severing something, the deck, annexing the rock, putting it in our yard. One of the words we haven't talked about is a crop is an implement. Does that ring a bell? Okay, they're considered personal property. So if I'm growing corn, if I'm growing grapes, if I'm growing marijuana, I can come back for them because that's personal property. Trade fixtures, the person who owns the trade, the business, can take them with them. Pizza ovens, bookshelves. If they are left with the property, then accession is how the new owner gets them, because they just leave them, and so they get them through accession. All right, sorry.
Okay.
Physical characteristics of land. It's immobile, you're not moving it, property. Right. It's indestructible. Sure, a flood could you know, damage it, but for the test, immobility, indestructibility, and uniqueness. They also use the word non-homogeneity, meaning no two parcels are the same. So if you get asked a question about a property that's on the corner or in the middle of the block, they're not going to have the same view. They're not going to be the exact same lot size. That uniqueness and non-homogeneity will affect the price of the property. The economic characteristics that affect property is scarcity. How many are there? Okay, there's not very many. What are the improvements? Do they have sidewalks? Is there a house on the property? How permanent is the investment? Is it a modular, a mobile home, manufactured? And then where's it located? Location, location, location. They're talking about the word situs. What site is the property on? So location, location. We have legal descriptions, that horrible chapter 5, where we talk about a school is in section 16. Meets and bounds is the oldest description back to the 13 colonies. It's going to say a point of beginning, go north, and then draw a picture. It's going to be really lengthy. They may go to a tree, to a monument, to a benchmark. They're going to try to determine, and it's going to be a long description. So they've got to be copied with care. You just cut and paste them. So it's going to be very lengthy, the meets and bounds. Then after a while, they decided, hey, we're going to draw squares and rectangles all over the United States. And we're going to do the rectangular survey system, townships and ranges. Townships go across, ranges go down, T, cross your T across. Lot and block is the most common. You live in lot 5, block 4, you're looking at a plat map, you go to a new home site, you're going to do lot and block. Luckily, you don't have to measure anything, so you need to know that an acre is 43,560 square feet. You need to know that there are, well, hopefully you know that a mile is 5,280, okay? That if you live in Denver, you need to kind of probably know that. And 1 square mile is 640 acres. So as a refresher, like again, maybe one question on the test about it, but if it said, let me get a piece of paper here. If it said the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter, okay, and we know that the whole square is, okay, hold on, I'm drawing it for you. Okay, the whole square, not that you can read this now that I see it, 640 acres.
Right.
Never eat soggy waffles. So the northwest quarter of the southwest quarter, you could find it. And if I find it, I have to go backwards. So I have to go in the southeast quarter, and then I have to find the northwest quarter within there. Okay. So it's right there. Okay, I could find it, but the much easier way.
Okay, that makes sense.
Because I gotta go spit, yeah, I gotta go find it. So it is the northwest quarter of the southeast quarter.
Okay.
Okay, but here's what you really do. You just say quarter. Okay, hold on. 4 times 4 equals 16. I remember 640 divided by 16, and that square is 40. Okay, hold on. I'm going to show you the picture here.
That's 40 acres, correct?
40 acres.
Okay. Okay.
And you know, to know what each square is, 640 divided by 4, so 160. So divide that into 4, 40, 40, 40, 40. Okay, so one question max, don't stress about it. Okay, not a big deal.
Yeah.
And for sure.
There's something here, I remember, something about, I believe the, hold my book up heavy. This guy right here with the
That's
school.
just showing you that school is in section 16.
Yeah.
And it's also saying that each one of those squares, there's 36 sections, it's 1 square mile. So if they say, how many square miles between section 1 and section, what's the bottom right corner, or section 36? There's 4 miles in between because there's 4 squares in between.
Okay, perfect.
Like
Okay.
not really showing up though, just so you know. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Mineral rights. Okay, we talked about those. Okay, water rights. Okay, they're the hardest to give away because we gotta know who needs it the most. So some states use the doctrine of prior appropriation. Says we're going to make sure that you get the water. We're first going to make sure that the people can eat and drink and have potable water. But then we're going to make sure the rest of the water goes to anybody who needs crops, irrigation for beneficial use. And that is the doctrine of prior appropriation. Water rights, riparian, river, they flow. Okay, so there you have riparian water rights if you're on a river that flows. Littoral, lake. Okay, that the littoral water rights are static water. They consider an ocean static water, even though my oceans move, but they obviously don't flow. Okay, so for the test, they do not flow.
Okay, so water, what is it? Water rights riparian, that's like river. Littoral is going to be lake, static water is ocean, doctrine of prior appropriation.
So that's where the first people, it's for their beneficial use.
So like needs, first the people that need it, and then beneficial use.
Correct. And accretion, avulsion, and erosion. Okay, erosion, side of the rivers, your land slowly erodes, you get less, you own less land. Accretion, the sand and dirt come up on your property. Accretion, they're ADD, they're adding to it. ADD, adding to it, okay? And then avulsion, violent storm comes, you lose part of your property, okay?
Okay, I'll have to look that up. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, encumbrances, okay, we know that a lien is always an encumbrance, but an encumbrance is not always a lien. An encumbrance could be something physical that would come with the property, like an easement. Let's see here. Priority of liens, okay, going to be based on how they were filed. A mechanic's lien is a vendor, a contractor, they fix the roof, you didn't pay them, they slap a lien on the property, they have to file it within a certain period of time in the county where the property is located. Liens are voluntary or involuntary. Voluntary is I put a mortgage on my house. Involuntary, you slap a lien, a tax lien, okay, something like that. So there are different types of liens. Easement is where, you know, somebody has the right to come on your property and use it. So you could have a servient versus dominant. One party is serving the other because their property is landlocked and they can't get to it without it, without letting them come over the property. Here is an example of, a servient, they're letting them drive. They have an easement, it's called a right of way, in order to get to the dominant person's house because they're landlocked and they can't get there any other way.
So they're serving them because they're dominant. Okay.
Correct. Okay. Easement appurtenant, it means it's going to run with the land. Easement in gross, typically it's, I always say I grossly hate to pay my utility bills. So it's going to be a railroad, a cable company. It's going to be a lot of times a business. The only way you get rid of an easement is abandonment. Like we don't, they're not there anymore. I buy both properties. I don't need it anymore. Typically I'm going to have to go file something. It's not just going away. The easement is either by necessity or prescription. I need it, or it's gonna be prescribed for 10 years. They're gonna build a street. And when they build the street, I won't need it anymore. Go ahead.
You said, sorry, I was drawing a blank. Basically like your electrician and things like that, that's a gross?
No, I mean like a railroad easement, a utility easement, like a, if there's a cable company that has this much, they can come in and dig up the cable. That's going to be an easement in gross, and because the cable company has to come on, and I just use the gross to remember that, that I grossly hate to pay my utilities.
Okay.
If I have a prescription easement for 5 years to use your property, but they're going to build a road, but then they don't. The way I get my easement extended is the word tacking. We tack on another 5 years. Again, a right of way is so that I can get to my house. So title work will show my easements for sure.
Okay.
All right, I think I might have set my stuff down in the wrong section here. Hold on. Yes, I did. All right. A license is something temporary. You can come hunt on my property. Doesn't mean that you're going to get to do it when the next guy comes.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Okay. An encroachment, something is illegally or encroaching across your property. Driveway, tree. A survey will help identify the boundary line.
Okay. And then 1 second. Sheetment, right? Is that what it's called?
As cheat is where the
Government
state is going to come in and cheat you out of your property. It's one of the ways they can acquire the property. You can acquire it through police power, eminent domain, taxation, or as cheat. And as cheat is the state cheating you. That's how I remember it, because you have no will and no heirs. They're really doing it to make sure that there's not a vacant property next to you for the next 20 years. Okay. Another type of an encumbrance could be CC&Rs, deed restrictions. covenant conditions and restrictions. So they're going to affect the use of the land. Could be that you can't build a shed, can't put up a fence, can't paint your house red. Leases, again, run with the land. So if the ownership changes, the lease remains in effect. Again, the people get to stay. Types of ownership. Okay, so let's look at these. So we've got freehold estates. Okay, I think people really mess up on these. Okay, you have an interest in real property. Okay, and it says there isn't a fixed duration. Okay, so you have fee simple, absolute. I absolutely simply own it all, highest level. It's what we want. Okay, that's the best one, fee simple. Fee simple defeasible says there's a condition. You can have this property so long as, while, or during you are running it as a church, having it as a liquor store, whatever the condition is. And then if you do not follow the rules, you have a possibility of it reverting back to, the original owner, because it was subject to a condition. Okay. A leasehold estate is where the person has a lease to be in the property, but they have no ownership. So the types of leasehold estates is an estate for years. It has a specific date. It ends, you don't have to give notice. A good example is a summer rental. Okay, you rent it for the summer, end of summer's up, you're out. Okay, so there's no specific date. We would have to agree to extend it at some level. Periodic, go ahead.
What is it? Lease?
Estate for years. And that's a leasehold, a type of leasehold estate.
Okay.
Periodic tenancy is month to month, year to year, week to week. Okay, and so that is always for a period, and it automatically renews at the end of the term, and it renews when you accept the next money, the next period of money.
So basically just like re-signing a lease.
No, you don't need a lease. If you're on a month to month, when you make your next month's payment, another 30 days start. Okay. So it's a period and it automatically renews. Okay. An estate at will is a lease without an established ending. It can be terminated by either party. So it's just like it's there for a long period of time type thing. Okay. Estate at sufferance, okay, is one where there's a tenant who is making the landlord suffer, okay, so that I'm the owner, the landlord, I am suffering now because you're staying in my property and you're creating what is called a holdover tenancy. You're not paying me, but you're staying there. So I'm suffering. Okay, the lease is expired or you haven't paid, and so I am suffering. Ownership. So the different types of ownership. So we have got severalty. So one person or one corporation who is seen as an individual person. So if a corporation has 5,000 employees, they are seen as one person. Okay, one person. So severalty. Okay, tenants in common. Okay, the way that you explain that, it is a form of co-ownership. Okay, there can be one tenant in common. There can be 10 tenants in common. Okay, they do not have to have equal shares. Okay. And you can will your ownership down to whoever you want, to your heirs. So the way I remember it is tenants in common. I say tenants in common heirs, commoners, common heirs. So it goes down. Okay. Now, if we have joint tenancy, okay, it's co-ownership, okay, you have to, the way I remember it is I have a shoulder joint with my armpit. So joint tenancy has to have an armpit. It has to have possession, interest at the same time. Everybody's on title. Okay. So joint tenancy, armpit. Biggest thing it has is right of survivorship, okay? So you own it together until one party dies. One party dies, the other party gets 100%, okay?
Okay.
If there were 3 joint owners, everyone would have 33 1/3. Third person dies, now it goes to 50-50.
Okay.
All right. If 2 people, if a married couple has joint ownership and they have a kid and they decide they want to add their kid to their house, they cannot come in the shoulder joint because they weren't in the armpit at the beginning. They were not there for possession interest at the same time on title. So they can only be added as a tenant in common.
Okay.
All right, common, community property. I think people typically understand that. Timeshare is where you own a week at a property, okay, that is fee simple a lot of times. There are campground membership timeshares. One of the questions on the Colorado, a campsite does not have to be registered, okay? I don't know why they asked that. If it's a cooperative, you have shares of stock, you have shareholders, you do not it's a different way of owning. So you own shares in the corporation that own the building. You actually do not own real estate in a cooperative, okay? You might have the right to possess the property under a proprietary lease, okay, for a certain period of time. Condo, walls in, you don't own the floor, okay? Townhomes, you may share a wall with a neighbor, but you actually own the ground. PUDs versus MUDs, planned unit development, mixed use development. If you have a life estate, it's a freehold estate, okay, but it's limited by someone's lifetime, okay? So the future owner will be determined in the life estate. So I think you might remember dowry, curtsy, and homestead. Dowries for a wife, homestead or curtsy, a man curtsies for his wife, so that's for the husband. And a homestead is where they take a portion of your estate and it's protected from certain debtors and collectors so that you are protected. Maybe 60, 90,000 of your estate will not get taken away. Yeah. If you have an ordinary life estate, okay, I'm going to let my son live in the property with my mom until my mom dies. At that point, the son could be named the remainder man, or it could have a revisionary interest that goes back to me. Pure atre via, another word that you need to know that says that is for the life of another. So if I have that, it's based on the life of someone other than the life tenant. So it's for the life of somebody else. Okay. All right, we talked about the bundle of legal rights. We are through that section, okay? Let's see where we're at. Can't find my little paper clip. Hold on, I'll find it here. So the other sections that we still have left, so, that is why I made this longer, because I did feel that, we weren't able to totally cover everything, and maybe you feel like, okay, I think I've got enough. You can tell me that, okay? The topics that we still have are land use, control, and regulations. It talks about eminent domain, taxation, escheat. We've got valuation and market analysis, where it talks about appraisals, the different approaches, cost approach, sales comparison approach. Okay. And then we've got, property disclosures, what we have to disclose or not disclose, where it talks about radon and asbestos and mold and lead-based paint. And then we've got property management, like leasing properties. So I can continue, I can stop. It's whatever you feel, I'm trying to, if there were 10 people, like there were supposed to be on here, but luckily I don't think it's me. Angie did get a hold of people. So I think they're just going to listen to it.
Okay. Yeah, I think For the most part, I think that stuff is pretty self-explanatory. So I think I
Okay.
just really go over the book and, kind of review. Really quick, property management.
Uh-huh.
There's so many properties that somebody could own and be considered a property manager. I feel like.
Not for that's not asked on the test.
Okay.
What's asked is if you own fewer than 7, so 6 or less, then it talks about record keeping. So that would be something that would be in there. And that answer is less than 7, 6 or less.
Okay.
But there isn't, no, that really doesn't come into play.
Yeah. Okay. And then, I think I'm good. Definitely touched base on everything. Yeah.
Most of it has been talked about, even in these last sections where there's just a few percent of the questions. A lot of them have already been talked about, whether we've talked about the different items or not. For me, read that RESPA guide. Definitely go over the chapter where it talks about radon and asbestos, how to get rid of asbestos.
Which chapter would that be?
Encapsulation. It's towards the back of the book. Let me find it for you.
Environmental issues.
Yes, environmental issues. And, that's just basically, you got to know that at one point in time, these were issues that were in homes. And so how do you deal with them? And literally, I can say real quick, asbestos affects your lungs, tiny little particles, it's highly friable. How you get rid of it is you encapsulate it. Could be in the glue of linoleum, could be in the popcorn ceiling, could be in the siding. An appraiser will look at asbestos as well.
In lead paint, what is that year for lead paint?
78 on the national test. And then on the Colorado, it's a building permit prior to 78. Okay. Lead-based paint affects children under 6 because they're the people that pick and peel paint, eat it, chew it. They're on the ground. Okay. Nobody has to test, but they have to be given an opportunity to waive it to get an inspection. They get a pamphlet called Protect Your Family from Lead. As a real estate agent, I've got to comply with the law and get everything signed in time. And the buyer has 10 days to conduct their risk assessment for lead-based paint.
Okay. Yeah, okay. Then I think that's about it.
I'm just going to go through these quick just to get it for you. Radon, they're worried about the level is above 4. And radon is colorless, odorless, tasteless gas. Radon is something that you can get lung cancer from. And if radon is in a home, if the air is not circulated around the exterior of the home, so the way you mitigate radon is you install a radon mitigation system. It is a fan with piping around the perimeter of the home, and you basically circulate the air and shove it outside. Okay, so radon is less in the summer in a house than it is in the winter because you don't have your windows open. There's no air circulating in the winter. Formaldehyde, you may get asked a question about urea formaldehyde, which was in foam insulation. Carbon monoxide can be confused with radon, colorless, odorless, tasteless gas. Okay, it builds up, carbon monoxide builds up in your system. You get nauseated, you have headaches, you don't feel good, you're not sure what's wrong. You may have carbon monoxide poisoning, you fall asleep that night, you don't wake up. Okay, carbon monoxide detectors have to be within 15 feet of each bedroom in Colorado.
Okay, 15, 15?
15 feet. Mold, okay, mold has to have 3 things. It has to have an organic substance, it has to have moisture, oxygen, and some food source, organic food source for mold to grow. Just because you have mold in your bathroom doesn't mean it's black mold and it's going to kill you. And we're not going to tell you, we're going to say, hey, if you're concerned, get it tested. Groundwater, water underneath the ground. There's a water table in the ground. And then if it's a high water table, you may have to have a sump pump to clear out water in your area. You got to make sure the water's safe to drink. Let's see, I'm just trying to make sure I have everything else. The rest of this, the underground storage tanks, talking about Superfund, CERCLA, that is on that document I said that is under RESPA. So I think I'll leave it at that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah. And I definitely plan on listening to your recordings. I've talked to you before and I
Yeah.
told you that, I listened to the recordings prior to like me testing, and I feel like I've learned more off the recordings from you than I did in actual class.
I know
So
you mentioned that.
helpful.
But,
Yeah.
and I think, I've been doing it a long time. So I say it's not that I have any magic. I just, and I do a lot of homework. Like over the weekend, knowing that I was going to teach, I went out and found 25 things that people are seeing on the test that I'm like, hey, I better make sure I talk about today, because I think people, some of the questions, they're hard. And, you may think you know something like that FHA question. The question says, using FHA financing, a new buyer would normally do all of the following, except, so it said you pay for mortgage insurance, MIP, you would apply directly to your bank or savings and loan that is FHA approved. You're going to buy a home that conforms with FHA requirements, and you're going to apply at a local FHA office, which sounds like a good answer, but there isn't an FHA.
Oh, okay. And that's what you're saying. So there is, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so there's just little tricks. One of the things that they've been saying is personal property. It uses the words, it says it can be hypothecated. I'm like, what? What does that mean? That means estimated. The value can be guessed, estimated. It can be alienated, given away. It can be turned into real property, okay? Or it can't be taken with you, okay? Well, the answer is it can be turned into real property, alienated, or hypothecated, okay? So, but the trick is they're always trying to trick you. So you have to read it and say, where's the trick word in there, okay?
So the personal property, it says you can't take it with you?
You can take it with you, but it can be turned into real property, meaning the sand can be put in the property. It can be alienated, given away. I can give away my personal property, or I can hypothecate it, estimate the value, and sell it to you at a garage sale. But it's a trick, because you're like, I don't know what we can do with it,
So what is the answer?
Turned into all three: real property, alienated, or hypothecate.
Oh, so it's like all the above.
Yes.
Okay.
So, let's see here. I'm just looking at some of the questions that I looked up. We talked about vendor, vendee. It says an optionor and an optionee. Okay, so that is, I've got the blue and the white house. I have the option to buy. Okay, it says make a contract for an option. Okay, if the optionee, that's the buyer, decides to exercise his option, when must he perform it? And you're like, I don't know. When
Yeah.
It says when he wants to, within 6 months of the state law, when it's demanded, or per the contract. It's
Per the contract.
Yeah. So it sounds easy, but when you read it and you're alone, it's not that easy. It's like,
Yeah, I wouldn't know.
yeah, you know what I mean? It's just the way it works. So I think, interstate succession, okay? When does that occur? Do you remember what the word interstate means?
Mm-mm.
Okay, with or without a will. So interstate is no will. So if you don't have a will, then they're going to give it according to the whatever, each state has a chart that says first it goes to the wife, then it goes to the kids, then it goes to the children. So that's the law of succession.
Okay. Is that like a copy? Can we see that you have?
No, these are just like, if you saw it, these are just me talking to students, trying to come up with questions that are tricky. I'll probably end up adding some, but I just go out all kinds of sources and try to find where are some harder concepts that people are getting confused on. Because what students do is they come back to me and they say, hey, there was a question about rose bushes. Can you give me what that answer is? No, because I don't know what the question was.
Yeah.
There are 11 different copies of the test. Maybe your answer is included. Maybe the other person's is excluded. So I have to try to find a source where the person remembers most of the answers, or, the concept. They can't just say, was this purple? I don't know, were there other choices? Was the word
Right.
laughter there?
That makes
I
sense.
don't know. So that's when I try to just teach the topic so that you can decipher what they're asking. And I think that's the biggest thing that people struggle with is what are they asking me to find? Are they asking me the color of the water bottle, color of the lid, how tall it is, or what
Yeah.
it has in it? And I go, oh, it's purple. I know Kathy likes purple. Okay, I'm gonna answer purple. No, they asked you what was in the water bottle and you didn't even read the question.
Yeah.
But that, you know, that's really how hard it is in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, that's perfect. I appreciate your help.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Absolutely. So, and if you think of other things, if you go out and start taking the tests, absolutely let me know. We'll address it, try to figure out, you know, take a snapshot of a question, however you want to proceed. I will help you with that. Okay.
Perfect. I appreciate you. I will see you tomorrow then.
All right. Well, maybe you'll see other people, or maybe it'll just be you and me, but there were a bunch of people. So I think they're just going to listen to the recording.
Did you happen, are we going to use this link or the link? Do we know yet?
This is the new link I gave you, right?
Yep.
We're going to use the new one. Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Okay.
Sounds good.
And if you want to text me a half hour before and confirm what it is, that's fine. Okay.
Okay, let me.
Because
What is-
like I said, I've never had a problem. I'm going to stop the recording.